we good, Bruce?
All right, call meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Everybody rise to the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do roll call.
Yes. Steve Digalow?
Here.
Ian McDonald?
Here.
Lori Belargin? Here. Bruce Belargin?
Here.
Danny Erickson? Here. Matt Kugel?
Here. Okay, together we engage, educate, and empower all learners, bridging their passions to pathways to create successful futures and positively contribute to our local and global communities. All right, first thing we'll do, approval of the agenda. Does anybody make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next item, public comment. Shannon, did you have anything?
I did not.
Okay. I didn't have anything either. All right, Trent, you're up. Registration guide edits, or 25-26 registration guide edits.
So this is something that comes before the board annually as we prepare, we're not even halfway through the 24-25 school year, but we have to start planning for the 25-26 school year. Our registration for classes for students takes place in the winter time, so in advance of that, we would bring forth any proposed course changes or new course proposals for board approval. So this is coming before you tonight as kind of a first reading, and then with formal approval at the December regular session. As you can see on the memo that was sent out, attached to the agenda, we have 3 course changes that are proposed. The rationale and description for those are all attached and included, as well as 3 new course offerings that we would like to bring on at the high school. Again, the rationale is included for each of those. I'll talk briefly about each of them, but again, the rationale is linked there as well. Universal Perspectives, that would be a name change from that course, from Universal Perspectives to Science Revolutions. It was previously brought in as like a combo co-taught with social studies. That's evolved over the years, so that would take the focus back to more science-based standards for that class. Multimedia Productions, which is currently a year-long course, 1 credit, would change it to a semester, would be 0.5 credits. Also change it from straight English credit to elective. That would give us flexibility on who teaches that course to help us maximize our staffing, to maximize the electives we're offering. And then CIS Writing Studio, this one would be contingent on the final plans from the University of Minnesota. This is one of our University of Minnesota partner classes that we teach on campus here by one of our SHS instructors. They are planning to shift the name of that class from Writing Studio to University Writing. So any approval with that ultimately is contingent on the U of M making that final change as well. The cliff notes on the reason for that move, besides the fact that the U of M is planning to change it, would be we're understanding that that would be a better transferable credit for our students in terms of college credit. And then the 3 new course offerings that we'd like to bring on at the high school, we have a CTE capstone course, which would allow our students in the CTE fields to go even more in depth with the business aspects of what they are doing. Students would still be required to take Business 1, take Business 2, but then have a variety of CTE experiences before taking that capstone, and again allowing them to go deeper into the areas of business and trades with that course. Speech is also on here. This is a class that we currently do not have a staff member that is currently licensed, but we have a member of our staff who is working through the licensure process to obtain a speech license, which would then allow us to offer this at our high school. We currently see a number of kids that end up leaving our building to go take this at UWRF or Northwoods through the ECC P-Start College now. So this would actually, I believe, be a projected savings for the district overall with not paying that tuition money out. And then the final one is an AP Human Geography class, as we're looking to expand what we're offering for AP options for our students. Again, a lot of information. It's all linked with the descriptions and rationale there as well, but that's the overview.
I have a couple questions. that universal perspectives, there's no change, you said it's just a name change, is there curriculum change at all?
Briefly, it's more so just making sure that we're aligning it straight to the science standards and focusing on those.
Okay. And then the multimedia, changing that from 1 credit to a half, and then English to elective, does that change the number of English credits that are available? I mean, do you anticipate any students having issues with English-related
So
credits?
with bringing speech on, not necessarily, no. And we feel confident in the variety of that English courses that we offer, that there are still plenty of options for our kids to take.
Okay, and then my last one would be back to speech. So right now, if they leave, do they get college credit for speech?
Correct.
So would they still, that would just be a high school offering,
It
no
would be a high
college
school
credit?
offering here, it would allow us then, my understanding is we would not have to permit through the ECCP program, kids the ability to go, if they chose to, they could go on their own, but then we would not be on the financial hook for them going to obtain it because we'd be offering it here. Our long-term vision is for that instructor to eventually work through the credentialing process with the University of Minnesota to make it a CIS class here as well. That's kind of long-term.
Yeah,
vision.
and that's kind of leading to my last piece then.
Yep.
So it could be a college credit course eventually.
That's what our overall vision for that
In-house.
would be. Yep, through the University of Minnesota.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Typically, that would be like a speech 2 kind of class, I would imagine. I mean, in the past, we used to have a speech teacher here in our district, and we offered speech 1 and speech 2. I would think that a college in the school credit class would be more likely to be connected with speech 2, but I don't know, maybe not.
Right.
Currently, the kids that take speech at like a Northwood Tech, it does just transfer in as like a speech, like your general speech course that most universities require kids to take. So it does transfer that way. So I don't know if it would stay at that 100 level. Most of the CIS courses that we teach transfer in as like a 100 level course, so. Mhm.
Are you saying we would have a speech class here and then there'd be an advance for the CIS, or would we?
Well, I don't know,
all be a
it's
CIS?
gonna have to depend on how it works out with the University of Minnesota. But I'm really happy that we're adding this back.
I'm excited about the CTE capstone. I think that sounds great to go deeper into that.
I had a question about that as well. So will a student be able to focus on a specific area for that capstone? I mean, because it's pretty broad with like STEM and the Fab Lab and foods and all that. So if somebody wanted to focus on in the area of foods, for example, would the whole capstone project be based on that area?
Yeah, so really what we think we can do with that is we can really personalize the experience for our students with that based on what their passions are and get them additional experiences when
So they would need to do a little bit of everything if they'd focus on one
they
area.
could, yes.
Would that be like a one-time class they would take? They want to
Yeah.
take it like
Multiple
multiple times,
times.
want to focus on
Right.
X, it would
Yep.
just be.
Senior year typically is what that would be.
They look great.
Other questions from anybody? Steve?
So the AP Human Geography course, did you already go over that?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to kind of the, yeah,
So on the last, with the course description in the last paragraph there, it says the goal for the course is for students to become more geoliterate, more engaged in contemporary global issues, and more informed about multicultural viewpoints. Is there more of a description for that? I mean, I know it's broad because you're dealing with a general outline here, but is there any specifics
I mean,
that you can answer?
I hadn't planned to specifically speak to that tonight. I mean, this information is pulled from AP typically when we're presenting on the AP courses itself.
So to be a AP course, there's standards outside of our school
Correct.
district that are set.
By advanced placement.
Exactly,
Yep.
so it's not it's not set by us, it's set by the.
Right.
No.
Okay, thanks Trent. All right, moving on, next item, superintendent report. No, nothing for the referendum invoices this month, correct, Shannon?
Nope. Nope.
Summary of the elementary school walkthrough by board members. Anybody have any comments on the walkthrough?
I'll just say it looks good, having a student that's over there, I'm glad to see, the updated carpet, lights look good, it's nice and bright. Big difference from the last time I was in that building, I haven't been there since it's been updated. I thought the lunchroom, multi-purpose area looked really good. Yeah, it was just a nice refresh, so I'm glad to see it. I'm looking forward to those covers getting changed out. So hopefully after spring break, or winter break, those are done. And, so I appreciate the coordinating that and getting us in there.
Good idea.
Any other comments from anybody? Nope. Yeah, thanks for Walden Market for walking through, just explaining what happened and a lot of things they said, like a lot of it is behind the scenes, sprinklers that you're not seeing and, the doors that they added and mechanical stuff they updated that you don't get to see, but it's there. So that was good to just have them walk through and explain everything to us. All right, next item, district and state report card
Yeah.
review.
So we'll do a tag team effort between the four of us here, but, so the state and district report cards came out a couple weeks ago, so those are all public. Every year at about this time of year, then we do a little presentation to the board and the community about Somerset in particular, and what does it mean, and what are the celebrations, and what are the areas that we're gonna keep continuing to focus on. So, we'll have you pull that up there. So we'll take you through district level, then Pam is not here, and she recorded a lovely Loom video, so she will be talking about her stuff, but we're going to pull up a video and she'll give you an overview there. Obviously, Trent and Joe will talk about their building, and Sarah will give kind of an overview to start, then I will wrap it up with some next steps, and basically once we have all this information, kind of what we do with it. So we internally have had this information for quite a long time, so we've already been acting on all of this data and this information. Obviously, it's the first time we're talking about it publicly, but we've been interacting with this for multiple months at this point. So Sarah's going to kick us off.
All right, well, thank you all very much. So you're going to get to hear from me quite a bit because I'm going to do an overview of kind of the components of the report card as well, just to build some understanding of all of the pieces. So we'll start off with the clicker, here we go, the why. So it is state law that we report out on the progress of how schools and districts are doing as a whole. And so we don't just, this is not a report card of just academic, right? It's not just all based on the state assessments that we take. It's also based on our attendance data over multiple years, any chronic absenteeism over multiple years, our graduation rates over multiple years. So there are formulas within it. You're assigned points and you get greater points for the closer year. So we have the most points for last year, 1.5, and then it's 1, and then it's a 0.5. There's a whole lot of metrics that go behind it. But just so that you know that this is not just based on our state testing data, there are a whole lot of factors that go into what makes up our report card. And it gives us, like Shannon has already alluded to, some really valuable information to look at areas where we're doing well, and then some spaces where we can certainly stand to improve. And so those are the two biggest reasons, but it's just important to remember that it is a measure of lots of different things over time. Okay? And I'll talk a little bit more about details as we go through that. So there are some changes. As I talked about the last time when we talked about our state assessment data, there were changes made to the report card this year, not in what you see on the report card, that has stayed the same, but how things were scored has been changed. So based on the fact that DPI did change the scale scores this year, they changed our cut scores to align us more nationally than what we were prior to. They did do scale adjustments to our achievement data. There is a math formula times 0.97. It is out there if you want to go take a look at it to see how they did the math to do it. But the effect of the formula was with the change in cut scores, in order to stabilize, it did bring achievement scores down across the state. And that was just to provide stabilization, because like I told you a month ago, we aren't supposed to compare to prior years. The report card is built on multiple years of data, so they had to find a way to stabilize it. So they did some, what they're calling scale adjustment to it. And so this is supposed to be a 1-year scoring change from DPI. Over the course of this year, they are going to convene a group together that is going to look at how they can equalize and like really stabilize the scores for multiple years. So this, we'll see what they come up with this year, but as for right now, they're telling us it's a 1-year kind of scale adjustment because of the change that was made over the summer. So what areas of our report card does this impact? It impacts achievement, as I've already said. It impacts our target group outcomes achievement, which I will explain in a little bit more detail, because those are based on ELA and math scores, and those were the scores that the cut scores were changed on for this year. And then it also does impact our on track to graduation, because we factor in 3rd grade English language arts and 8th grade math. And so because those were those achievement scores, again, it does impact those areas on our report card. It does not impact our growth scores. So when you see growth, I'll explain that piece, and it did not, the scale score changes did not impact that. So all of this gets put together, okay, it's weighted, all of the areas, and these are then the 5 categories where districts and schools fall in. 5 stars, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so forth. And so we get placed in one of those. I'll share with you, if you haven't looked already, we did as a district exceed expectations, and then each of the buildings is going to talk about their own individual rating as well. So this one is small, I realize that. This will be linked when we're done, so you can take a peek at it. But there are a whole lot of parts and pieces to the front page. This is the front page of our actual report card this year. So we have regular district information, okay, demographics, enrollment, those pieces, okay, and it gives us that context. We do have an optional narrative statement. So this is nothing that is related to anything that you might specifically find in here. It gives us the opportunity to say, here's who we are in Somerset. Okay, so we do have a District 1, and then each of the buildings also has one that is very specific to their building. Our overall score rating right here, so as a district we were at 70.9 overall, and that's taking all of the pieces from all the report cards, all the sub areas, and averaging them out, and that's where we landed this year, which, as I said, is a 4-star. Okay, we exceed expectations. One of the things that DPI changed in the last so many years with our priority area weights is it is weighted. Okay, you can see that this pie chart is a little tilted this way. Based on our economically disadvantaged population, which we are currently, last year, we're 26.6%, this moves. Okay, so the dark blue here is achievement, and the lighter blue is growth. So the higher your economically disadvantaged population, the greater that percentage, the more emphasis is put on growth than achievement. And the tipping point is 35%. Okay, so once you start to hit, if we were to hit 35%, you would see this light blue get a little bit bigger. Okay, that's how DPI does that. And then the bottom two are split evenly for all districts, target group, and on track to graduation. Each of our 4 priority areas, okay, we have achievement, growth, target group outcomes, on track to graduation. I am going to get you to see these bigger. But just for your awareness, if you see the gray on here, those are our state comparisons. So we are the dark blue, the state is the gray. Okay, so you can see, like, we are the dark blue, the state is the gray. Okay, this is an area of focus for us because growth was not what we wanted it to be this year. There is no comparison for the target group because that is our kids against our kids. So there's no state comparison to that because those are kids that we work with here. And then on track to graduation, we are that darker blue, and then the state is the gray. So we've got some spaces that we're done really well, and then we also have some spaces where we want to look for some improvement. So overall, our achievement from last year was at a 71. We did go up this year to a 71.7. which is fantastic. It keeps us higher than 83.7% of districts in the state. So our achievement, our kids are achieving at a higher level, okay? One thing to note about our achievement score, students, these students that are figured into this are only kids who would qualify to have been with us for a full academic year. So if we had a student that moved in, or a group of students that moved in January or February, they are not factored into this score because we would only have had 5 or 6 weeks with them, okay? And also, kids that are not tested do not affect the achievement score. So if a parent chooses to opt their child out, it does not negatively impact our achievement score. This is really kids who took the forward exam, the pre-ACT secure, and the ACT and the DLM. Those would be that's the stuff that is in here. Okay? Am I going at an okay speed? If you have questions, just give me a wave. I know it's a lot. Growth. Okay? So you can see last year we were at 63.2. This year we are at 60.3. And you might wonder, okay, well, but our achievement went up. Okay? So when you figure your growth scores, they're looking, and we are looking at how quickly and how well are we growing kids against kids who are like them across the state. How well are we growing our students with disabilities against other students with disabilities across the state? So it's not just did your kids grow, but how did they grow in relation to others, okay? And we, the state average, what we want to get to is a 66. If you hit 66 or higher, that means you're moving kids at typical and greater growth. And you can see on here as a district, we were at 62.2 for ELA and 58.4 for math. So we have a little bit of work to do. Last year, we were 66 for ELA and 60.3 for math. So we have some work to do, and the buildings will talk a little bit more about what they've done already just to start to address that. This is normative over time. It's not just that snapshot, it's looked at over time from one year to the next. So in our district, it's how did they grow from 3rd to 4th grade? Okay, that's how Pam's growth score is figured. And then like in the middle school, 4th grade to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8. So there's a whole chunk. And then in the high school, it's that 8th up through the ACT. Okay? So that takes away the extenuating circumstances as far as if they're economically disadvantaged, if they were proficient last year. All of those pieces are weighed in to give us that score. Target group outcomes. Okay? The reason why we get a target group outcome, there's a bunch of reasons why. Okay? This is our neediest group of students. Okay? They are our bottom quartile of students. Okay? Last year we were at 63, this year we're at 59.8. Again, this is a space where we need to focus. Okay? The reason why Wisconsin DPI also looks at this is we want to make sure that kids are being equitably included in what's happening through schools. Okay? That we have some score stability from year to year because they're watching groups of kids as they grow. Okay? Looking for that continuous growth, this is multiple measures. Target group is not just how well did they do on the test. It's like a mini report card for us. So we look at it in the 4 priority areas as well. Okay? It gives us that chance again to address the gaps that we might be seeing and supporting our students. Okay? So this is actually what our mini report card looks like for our target groups. Okay? So it's roughly the bottom quartile. So depending on the year, that bottom quartile could be all students who are still developing. It could be students that are developing and approaching. In some districts, some kids are meeting and they're still in the bottom quartile. It just depends on how the kids fall. Okay? And it looks at 20% is achievement. Okay, so you can see here, our target group kids were there, our non-target group kids were here. So these are our kids next to our kids. Okay? 50% is in growth. That's a big piece, right? How are we growing? You can see they're closer here as our target group's at 58.4, but our non-target group is at 64.1 for ELA, 56.5, and 58.4 for math. So you want these two to be identical. You want our kids growing at the same rate and 66 or higher. Okay? Chronic absenteeism is 15%, and so this is the average of multiple years. It's not just a 1 year. So like the data that gets figured into our report card right now is not 23-24 data, it's 22-23 attendance data, because that is a year lagged. Okay, so that's the most recent we have. And we're at 91.4 and 95.6 for our target and non-target group. And then graduation rate, this is also a 22-23 figure, and it's 4 and 7 year cohort. So we have 94.1 and 97.8 when it comes to graduation for our students. I do have a link in there for the target group outcomes guide if you want way more information. There's a whole lot in there. But this is our mini report card and our opportunity for us to identify where are the spaces that we need to be moving this group of students that needs extra support. Okay. And then the last priority area is on track to graduation. Okay, last year we were at 90.3, this year we're at 89.4. We're higher than 80% in the state. Again, like I had already said, this is attendance data for 22-23, as well as chronic absenteeism for that year. This is our graduation rate. And then in this one as well is 3rd grade English Language Arts and 8th grade mathematics. Okay, the research that's out there, okay, and why we're also operating under Act 20 right now is by 3rd grade we need all kids to be readers. There's a lot of research out there, and by 8th grade kids need to be algebra ready. And so that is why we get double counted for both 3rd grade ELA and 8th grade math. Okay?
Sarah,
Yes.
the 3rd grade reading score and the 8th grade math score, what years are they from?
This year, the last year, 23-24. So our achievement data is 23-24. Growth data is 23-24. It's attendance and graduation. Those ones are lagged.
Year.
Yes,
And
yes.
it seems like, well, you're not looking at one particular grade though.
Right.
I was thinking,
Mhm.
you know, like if you're looking at this year's seniors,
Right.
why wouldn't you take their 3rd grade reading score? But you're looking at the district overall.
Yep, we're looking at overall, and are we making changes based on like our last 3 years of data?
Got it.
Mhm. Great, thank you. All right, so you may have seen this graphic floating around social media. We do exceed expectations. We were 11th in our CISA this year out of 39 schools. We wanted to also build some context when we put this out because we did this. We're very proud of the fact that we exceed expectations. But some other really awesome things to note about the work that we're doing here. We have in Somerset 16 college credit bearing courses that we offer, which is a lot, which is fabulous. We had over 1,000 college credits earned by our 2024 grads last year. So they went off to school really well prepared to step out and not just be freshmen walking in, right, and getting some opportunities to register. The average number of credits for 2024 grad was 8.59 that they walked out with. Now we know that some had more than that, some had less, but that's a pretty awesome average. And we had 2024 graduates that had above a 4.0, which is fantastic. And we had 91 that earned more than our required number of credits. So we have some kids working really hard and we're working to support those pieces. So we're extremely proud of the fact that we continue to exceed expectations. We know we have some spaces for growth, but we just wanted to also paint that full picture. So, questions? That was a lot of information. I know. All right, can you push escape or push play? Yeah, perfect.
We're going to bring you Pam in her video in a moment.
But mostly just, yeah, and then we'll put it back.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm not able to attend the meeting tonight, but I would still like to take a look at the elementary school report card with you. Looking at our overall score, you will notice we have a slight decrease from the prior year. Our score this year is 74.2. Again this year, SES exceeds expectations. Looking at our achievement performance, it is 78.4 overall. We're not going to look at last year's score in comparison, but rather we're going to look at how we do compared to the state. You will see in English Language Arts, that we are at 73.9, and we are higher than the state at 58.6. In math, we are at 82.3, again, higher than the state at 64.5. Moving over to the growth area. We had an increase in our growth from last year and are at 62.2. However, we are behind the state in both ELA and math. And our goal is to continue to increase our growth rate to get above the state average of 66. Our target group outcomes are 64.1. At Somerset Elementary School, we only test our 3rd and 4th grade students. So we only have one opportunity with our 3rd grade students to look at and grow our target group. Our target group scores are achievement, 46.4, growth, 57.5, chronic absenteeism, 85.1, and attendance at 94.9. On track to graduation. In this section, we are slightly increased at 89.0. Our chronic absenteeism score is 92.3, and we are above the state's 83.1. Our school-wide attendance is 95, which is above the state at 93.2. And our 3rd grade ELA is 70.5, which is well above the state's 57.0. Now, this is a point of pride for us, as this is a scale-adjusted score. Moving on to the next slide, I would like to take some time to talk about, as the result of our data and what our data is telling us, I want to share with you some of our building goals, our 90-day plan, and our academic focuses at SES. We are continuing to focus on growing our instructional practices. And this school year, as I've already told you, we will be completing tools 6 through 10 of the top 10 tools. We're not just learning them, but taking them and applying the new learning in our practices. Also this year, we added Haggerty Bridge the Gap, which is a phonemic awareness curriculum. We added this in both 3rd and 4th grade. As a staff, we are taking a closer look at the identified ELA tested topics at each grade level. We know that the assessments given in 3rd and 4th grade are a culmination of the instruction given in all grades. We want to build the foundation for future success starting in JK. Math is an area we are working with our new standards and working with a new curriculum, math expressions. Staff are pleased with what they are seeing so far and are really embracing the different styles and approaches to teaching math instruction. If you have any questions at all about our Somerset Elementary School report card, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Just have a question for some clarification.
Absolutely.
Can you go back to that slide where she had her, or can you pull that up where she had the numbers?
Yep.
So can you just explain, so like the target group outcomes and the on-track graduation, the
Yep.
chronic absenteeism,
Yes.
it's a high number, but what does that mean?
You want it to be a high number. That means you have low chronic absenteeism. And so
So
chronic
how do they
absenteeism.
measure that?
So we have to report our attendance to the state every year. So they take a 3-year snap of each of the years. And so if you are over 10 days absent, then you could qualify as chronic absenteeism because state law says you must be in school. You get 10 kind of free days
Yeah.
for the course of a year.
So that's comparing our absenteeism to the rest of the district, at what
Rest of the
grade
state.
level?
So this would be, so she is compared, so Pam is compared to K-5 schools, even though she doesn't have a 5th grade. In the same way as our middle schools compared to 6-8 middle schools, even though middle school has a 5th grade here, okay? So this is all elementary schools in the state, K-5. So the attendance rates are more than just 3rd and 4th grade, which is why it's not just the achievement, the attendance piece comes in with all grades that you serve in your school.
Okay. And then it's on the target group, can you describe again, what is the target group? And like chronic absenteeism, that obviously applies to only a select group?
Of within that, so the target group is your bottom, so we have 100 kids, right? That's the easiest way to do it. It's basically your lowest 25.
Lowest
right?
25 in terms of?
25%, the 25 performers, right? So if I'm gonna talk 100%, it's the lowest 25% of performers.
Like
Like
general,
in
overall,
general, overall.
test
Each-
scores?
All of the, so,
Okay.
yep,
Oh, state assessment, okay.
based on our state assessment. So those students for ELA and math that are in that bottom quartile, which it could be a bottom quartile where you're talking, 20% proficient and below, or it could be a bottom quartile where it goes from like 5% to 50%, right? Like the quartile shifts and changes, okay? So those kids become identified through that, and then they use that group of kids to figure this
And
score.
look at their specific.
Correct, their
absence-
data. Mhm.
Absence rate.
Yes, yep,
All right.
yep.
And it's always the same every year. It's the same state assessments, essentially, right?
Yes.
Identifies the same group.
No,
Look
it
at the
identifies
same
the
things.
same quartile, not the same
Not the
kids.
same people, right.
The goal is to move those kids out, right? Like, and to make some shifts and changes in our programming and how we're working with them so that you're always gonna have a target group. There will always be a target group because it's your bottom quartile of performers. Whether that bottom quartile is all in developing, or it's all in approaching, or it's half in approaching and half in meeting. Or just whatever that bottom quartile is.
Okay.
Yep.
And then my last question, just because I'm kind of
Yeah,
wrapping my head
no
around
problem.
it. The economic disparity piece you
Mhm.
talked about,
Mhm.
who sets that standard and how is
So-
that identified?
So they have to qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so that's a family has to apply. I mean, so we may very well have families and students in our district who, for whatever reason, choose not to apply to be a part of free and reduced lunch, and unless they apply, we can't count them. So that is strictly on, if they apply and a family qualifies, then they are a part of that economically disadvantaged.
Okay.
Yep,
Thanks.
great questions, thank you.
But the economically disadvantaged may or may not be part of the target group.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
since I was asking other questions, that
Yeah.
was my question from
Yeah,
earlier.
great, no problem.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other questions before I turn it over to Joe?
So as you look at our middle school, you can see our overall score still exceeds expectations. It is down a bit from the year before. We do well in our area of achievement. And looking at how we compare to the state, and even compared to last year, we're pretty constant there. An area where we're working on, but we did do well in the middle school, Sarah talked about your target to hit is 66. Meaning you're moving your kids at the expected rate. Obviously, ideally, we want to be moving them more than that, but it is something that we are doing in the middle school with this piece of data. And you can see where, as we mentioned before, when you saw Pam's, we line up right with that expected movement for our kids. Again, as we talk as a staff, we looked at our data, we want to push that beyond. Not just be there as a district and in our middle school. Our target group, which we just talked a whole bunch about, that is our lowest quartile kids. You can see that we are below that 66 where we want to land and work above. And so a lot of our discussions, as we looked at this data as a staff, started to segregate and pulling them apart. Who are these kids? Because we can see who that target group is. What are we doing in our classrooms to support where we have these gaps, along with continuing to grow our kids who are growing. So we've had a lot of discussions on how we're working with that. Some things that I'll point out right now. Last year we developed a really distinct framework for our RTI. And so this year it's in action, full speed ahead, where we have a lot of flexibility and movement in our building every 2 to 3 weeks, where kids are moving in and out of where they might need a little extra in ELA and math, our two biggest areas that get accounted for here. And so that's not just our students that might have an IEP attached to them or a 504. These are students where maybe in ELA I'm a little bit below the bar, so what do we pull them in to add a little extra to boost their skill level? And we have been able to do a lot of this year in the middle school with smaller groups to even as small as 1-to-1 to in some of our periods where we have some work time with kids where we're doing something. We just talked today at 5th grade across the grade level. A couple days a week we're doing something intentionally in math to move this bar. And so that's one way we're using that data and looking at how are we moving those kids that show up in there, but also how does it impact the others that are in the classroom with them at the same time. And so I think that's a really big picture to share of how we use that data. in our middle school right now. Our on-track to graduation is pretty consistent with the district, and our kids are performing and showing up at or right above the state in all areas there. So we're solid there with what we have going on in our middle school. So how does it relate to our 90-day plan? So when we disaggregated that data starting back in late July, early August, we started pulling out pieces of how do we attack where our kids are struggling the most. And what we found in the middle school, our kids were struggling the most with their vocabulary skills and the identification of those key ideas and details I mentioned before. Now, even though that sounds just like ELA, that's really across the board. If you look at how they're asked to do math, they're asked to read a problem, to segregate what those important pieces are, pull them out, and how am I going to use them? And so even though as you look at kind of our work might appear to be attacking just ELA, it will impact math, our two big areas. It also impacts social studies and science, based on those skills that we chose to attack. And some of the things we've done so far, we've done some peer observations in our building, given teachers an opportunity to go out and see how are we engaging students in classrooms that aren't my same subject. We've been able to have a couple teachers who, for example, we've had our teachers went to a different building and watched that in action. So we can see how are people bringing kids in, getting them engaged, because when they're engaged, we're going to be able to move that bar. We're going to continue that in our second 90-day plan with adding some constructive feedback by peers, noticing some things. Hey, I've tried this that I saw in your room, here's how it's working for me. Using our experts in the building, to move with the kids that we all have together. Along the areas of vocab and the key ideas and details, we did a lot of work in our first 90 days of identifying things that we are currently using, or we think, hey, I think this would really work for us. And some people had already started some implementation and trial, and that's really part of our second 90-day. We're going to put this stuff to work that we're learning. We're also going to do some adult education, we called it, for lack of a better term. We discussed it as staff where, for example, in our meetings, we're going to sit down and like Sarah might have something, Steve might have something, Danny might have something, and we're going to share what we're doing so you can see it and learn about it and take it back and try it. Because what I might be doing in my math classroom might really apply to something I can adjust in my social studies or science and build those skills that we're all working on together. And go back to trying to really move the bar here for all our kids. So that's a lot of our intentional items in our work that we have in play right now based off that data that comes from our state report card. Digging into it and how we're going to use it to make something better. Questions you might have about the middle school?
What's that, not target time, or what's the time of day that you said they were working? Is that advisory or what?
So in 2 periods of our day, so in what we refer to as target time, that's where a lot of our intervention happens, where we have those smaller groups, or we're doing something grade level wide. We also do some of that stuff in what we call foundations, which ends up being opposite our lunch and our band choirs, where yes, there's some structured work time when we might be working with a teacher, but we're also able to pull some of those things in there to move the bar with students there. So we have 2 periods in our day that are between 25 and 37-ish minutes long that we're using those periods in our day outside the regular classroom to try to move that bar.
So does each kid have something they're supposed to be kind of set in during those target times then?
In target times, they are organized intentionally, are coming out of last year. You could probably think of it as our kids who probably, jumped the wrong way, sorry. I'm all over the place here. Which way did I go? There we go. Our kids who probably most likely landed here before we knew it, we pulled some of that lower quartile that we saw with performance in our building and created groups in a target time class. So for example, in 7th grade, Mr. Catlick, ELA, Mr. Mitchell, math, they essentially share that group as we started the year. So on this day, a certain group of that kids go to Mr. Mitchell, and Mr. Catlick has the other kids, and then it's vice versa. It's a attack what they needed. Where we've grown is, we have kids that were outside that initial group and other target times that were working on things they needed, yes. If they needed to move in to more of an intense intervention, we're now bringing them in and out during that period to get to serve their needs and what they need now. Good
I'm
question.
just trying to work on growth in general. I mean, you'd think every kid would have something at that time.
Yeah, they do. So even if you're not in that specific group we started with,
Yep.
what's happening in, for example, Ms. Klein's room or Mr. Klinger's room is also very supporting things they need now, where they're looking at intentional math or reading work where they're have novels or they're working on their rigor is a big part of things we're doing there. So the intensity and level varies, but that's our period we're really trying to attack those things for sure.
Do you, so when you look at, I know you said you identify students, right, in these groups. Is there, when you look at the target group, the growth group, on track, like, is the bottom quartile typically the same as they progress through? And obviously this is over many years, but do you see much, when you get to middle school, do you start to see fluctuation as maturity hits?
So interestingly enough, the target group is much easier to navigate than it used to be. It used to be lagged data, and so it wasn't as useful as it is now. So I would say we can get back to you on how that's going, because I think this is the first year where we're really looking at it and being able to use it,
Yeah.
just simply because it hasn't been super user-friendly.
So when you
in
say
the past.
lag data, like how old is it?
So like there were kids that were not in the middle school that appeared on the middle school target group.
Well, they're already
years
through
ago.
into high school.
Correct, so I can't, there's no impact for it like that the middle school could take. That's not the case anymore. Now we can see, like, here's the kids that need the.
We have now.
Yeah, that we
Yeah.
have now that we can still
In our
impact.
building, that came even from the elementary in the 5th grade.
Yep.
Like, we have a starting point where we can try to meet kids with what they need now, for sure.
And then, Trent, I know we get to Trent, but advisory in the high school, when a student comes in ninth grade, they essentially get an advisor assigned
Correct.
that follows them through, correct?
That's our game plan, yeah.
Oh, that's new?
So it's been done a variety of different ways, but this year, each kid has an advisor 9 through 12, and our plan is, so whoever they have this year as a ninth grader, they move up with that advisor next year in 10th grade, so they have the same advisor in 10th grade and 11th grade and 12th grade, so they can have a consistent adult to go to and really get to know the kid on a personal level.
So are you looking at
In the
the-
middle school, I don't think that's as dual because our 5th graders are there and their advisors they spend the day with our 5th grade teachers for the most part and some of our special teachers.
Oh,
And then at 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th, right? So to, thinking out loud, to have those 8th graders come back and our 5th graders who aren't attached, they went all of a sudden going together in the building, I don't think would be a good mix in a middle school with that gap in maturity.
Yeah, okay.
I think that would be really hard to manage.
Yeah, I just think, like, how do you
yeah.
track?
Yeah.
How do you track, the same problems occur every year, but different teachers are dealing with it.
So the one thing
Hard to
I
address
think
that.
will be interesting that Sarah mentioned with, you think about this target group and she mentioned our quartile, because you can see where they score. So like our bottom, 25th percentile, right? This year, those kids might actually be scoring pretty well. And so our goal is to keep moving that bottom quartile up. Does that make sense? Where even kids that fall in that, you look at them and man, that kid's really doing well in school.
But they're still the bottom quarter.
They still fall there because they're the bottom quartile.
Somebody has to.
Someone has to be.
Someone has to be there when you start sorting the data, right? And so when I say moving that bar, like that's our ultimate goal there, that bar is up and hey, those kids are really doing awesome, or at the best of their ability, and they're scoring where we want them to keep going. Not just they're way down here, right?
Yeah, my last question, if that happened, how would these numbers change? What would you see change on this?
I think these would look like 70s and 80s.
Those numbers would go up if that,
Yes.
if that bottom
Yeah.
quartile just continued to
Yeah.
climb? Okay.
Yeah, because these kids that fall here, I think, we're really gonna impact that too. And so, yeah, our goal is to hit these all in that, well above 66 is where we wanna shoot for. They'd still be the bottom quartile, but if we're hitting the 70s or 80s down there, and we've got some really great things going.
Okay, thanks.
Once you push buttons, I went 5.
high school perspective here, so when you look at our achievement, first of all, our overall score from 22-23 went from a 65.1 to this most recent one to a 66.8, so we did see an increase of 1.7 overall score. In terms of our achievement, if you break down, I know it's got our score of a 67.9, previous year was a 66.1. Just to give you kind of a snapshot of over 4 years too, just for some historical data, 4 years ago we were at a 62.9, so we've seen a 5-point increase over that. Our quick takeaways with that was that English was at a 72.5 last year and this year, so our achievement was the same for English, but math did go up by 3.5. But overall, if you look at achievement, Somerset High School compared to the rest of the state, we were at the same or higher than 77% of the schools in the state. In terms of growth, our score this year was a 50.8. Going back to 22-23 school year report card, we were at 47.0. So again, we did see an increase from 1 year to the next with our overall growth score. Over the course of 4 years, this is somewhere where we saw a significant increase as well, with English going from 41.3 4 years ago to a 56.5 this year, so an increase of 15.2 over 4 years. Math was a 14.7 4 years ago to a 45.1, so a 30.4 increase there. So overall, we've gone up 22.8 from growth from 4 years ago to this most recent one. Growth is continuing to be, as you can see, it's one of our lower areas on here. This is one of our building goals, as we talked at one of our last presentations here. That is a focus of our building with growth. We're doing a lot of work this year on identifying where our kids are currently at, and then focusing on growing them all, not just, I mean, I'll talk about our target group in a second, but growing all of our students in the different areas. In regards to our target group, I know that's been talked about by Sarah at a district level, by Pam and by Joe. Our target group was a 55.5 compared to last year at a 52.7. This means we were at the same or higher than 44% of the schools in the state. And I think one thing that we've been able to really take away from this is knowing exactly who our target group is and being responsive to that. So similar to what the middle school has, we have our time, we call it Spartan time, at the end of the day where all of our students are available, all of our teachers are available, and we've been intentional with placing our students with that based on two factors. One, we started the year making sure that every kid was with a teacher that they had, but then after we had almost a quarter of the school year completed, teachers had an opportunity to identify, okay, here are some kids that based on what I'm seeing in the classroom, I feel like I need to see during that 25-minute period time at the end of the day, in addition to looking at our target group to ensure if a kid's in our target group for math, they're seeing their math teacher at a minimum of 1 to 2, most of them are 2 times per week, they're seeing their math teacher during that Spartan time. A student who's in our English target group is seeing their English teacher typically at least 2 times per week during that Spartan time. So again, just making sure we're being responsive to knowing we know who our kids are in our target group, ensuring that they have that additional time with their content area teachers during that. And then in terms of our on track to graduation, so last year we were at a 96.4, this year we were at 94.9, so we did see a little bit of a dip in our overall score there. However, if you look at our chronic absenteeism, 95.2 is a good thing in this scenario, as we talked about earlier, so our attendance rate is really, really strong, and I think that there's a number of factors for that. I think our students feeling connected to at least one adult in our building, there's a correlation with that. I also think the percentage of kids that are involved in at least one extracurricular has a correlation with that as well, where kids are feeling welcome in our building and they want to be there. If that wasn't the case, I don't think our attendance would be what it is. And our graduation rate as well there. So again, if you look at our overall score, 66.8 last year, or this most recent one compared to a 65.1, so we did see an increase, but as I talked about at our last meeting, our big emphasis this year is on student growth and then focusing on our target groups. So a lot of our 90-day plan work has really centered on that. So our first 90 days, we spent a lot of time collecting and analyzing data. So not just classroom level things, but we have our screeners that we do with our A Math and A Reading. Our students took the practice ACT this fall. We have not gotten those results yet. We should be getting those in the next week or two, but that will be actionable data that we can then review that's very fresh from this fall to help shape not only our Spartan Time groups, but shape our instruction as well. One thing over the next 90 days that we plan on doing with that is actually having real conversations with our students to sit down to actually go through that with their advisory teacher, someone who they should have a good relationship with that they know and they see every single day, to help better understand, okay, so we took this practice ACT, here's where you scored in the different areas, here's what that means, and then help them set goals for when they take those assessments in the spring where they can be aiming for to be realistic with that. Really trying to help our students understand the importance of taking those things serious. Obviously, we want them to achieve at high levels. We want them to achieve at the best of their abilities. And for every kid that might look different, but we know where we're gonna start and then aim to grow with that. So over the next 90 days, again, I talked about the practice ACT results, but our departments, several of them have developed department assessments. The departments that do not have them currently are in the process of developing them, so they'll be giving those mid-year assessments as another dipstick to kind of see where we are at with things. We have found over several years now that the departments that have been doing those and tracking and really understanding where their kids are at, they have a really good handle when it comes to state assessment season, where their kids should be performing at then, and there shouldn't be many surprises with that. Another aspect that we plan to bring during these next 90 days is involving student voice and engagement with different things related to our SEL goal as well. And then finally, just being intentional about community building. So trying to provide times through advisory throughout our day for the different groups and classes to get together to help build that school culture even further. I want to skip ahead there.
I had a couple questions. So we'll just start on this one. Can you just talk a little bit like the exam and student celebrations, student
Yes.
voice engagement, intentional community building, like how is that gonna impact or increase growth? Like what are you doing in those things and how does that help
Yeah.
growth?
So I glanced over the exam and student celebrations. So that was part of our first 90-day plan, was as a staff to examine what are we currently doing to celebrate our students and to recognize them, and what could we be doing? So that ties not necessarily to the academic achievement goal that we're looking for with growth, but to our SEL and belonging goal to help help our students feel valued, feel welcomed, help show respect amongst each other. So that's what we're trying to do there, is just get a really good handle on what are we currently doing and what could we be doing to help promote the good things that are happening in our building.
Okay. And then I don't see anything on here like addressing the math. So if can you just go back one slide? Math isn't super high, right? It doesn't look great in the growth section there compared to the state.
Yep.
So like, what's the plan? I don't see anything in your 90-day or the second 90-day to address that. What's the point?
Yeah. So we're doing a lot of work around building thinking classrooms. We're in, I think it's the second year working with that. So over the course of 4 years, we've seen steady growth. We're not where we want to get to yet. We're continuing to make strides in that area. We're working with a math consultant as well, and just really trying to work vertically as well. So spending time on our professional learning days and beyond that with our 5-12 team together to understand, okay, where are our kids going from middle school all the way through high school, to ensure that we at the high school know when kids are coming to us exactly where they're at so we can be responsible.
Okay. And so then that leads into my next one. You talked about middle school. Can you just bump back to the middle school slide like this? So do you have any thoughts on why does math drop off from middle school to high school? Because that's a pretty significant drop, right? I mean, we go from...
Well, these are different groups of kids though, too.
I know, but I mean, it's got to be fairly... Right, is this a pretty even trend? Like every year do we see kind of that drop in when we hit the high school math?
So,
And I know you probably don't have an answer. I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just curious, like, if I look at this and I go, okay, like math is on track, and then I jump to the high school, we see a big decrease. I'm just curious, like, if there's a change in curriculum as a board, is it a staff issue? Like, what is do you have any thoughts on what can we help you with?
Yeah, so, I mean, one thing is looking for some stability. We've had different turnover in some of those positions as
Okay.
well, so, I think there's some other factors that I think go into that as well, that I don't know that I'd be prepared to speak on that at this particular moment, but I think there's some things that I have in my mind that we're working to shore up, for sure.
Okay.
A high priority.
Which is why it's year 2 with the math consultant. It's working with.
That will
with the
roll
math
into the
team.
high school?
Mhm.
Okay.
It has, this
So the
is,
nice,
she has been
one
with
of the
them.
nice things that we're
Mhm.
seeing right now is, like I'll take our 9th graders, for example, our 9th graders in algebra or in geometry, the way that they did business in the middle school, that's all they've ever known, right? So now when they get to the high school, they're getting similar approaches, similar mindsets, similar expectations with some of those approaches that they're used to in the middle school. So that, from a transition standpoint, we've seen that to be fairly smooth and have seen some benefits from that as well.
Okay. And then, if a student is out for like college or if they're working, right, because you have high school students that are work, whatever, how does their attendance apply to these, like, does that have any bearing? Are they taking the assessment, so therefore they count, or if they're not here?
So in terms of like attendance, if they're leaving school to work, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or if they go to college?
Like to UW River Falls?
Yeah, like, does their lack
doesn't-
of presence on campus impact this at all?
It doesn't negatively impact us, no.
Okay.
That's a part of their educational programming. The kids that are leaving us to go take those classes or going through there, they would take the state assessments unless their family's opting them out of that. But yeah, it doesn't negatively impact us for
Okay. So I don't even, I'm gonna take everybody's time. My last question would be, do you have any immediate thoughts? And again, not putting you on the spot, you can come back, like, why did we go from exceeds to meets in high school? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think if you look at each of, sorry, I'm on the middle school score there still. You know, again, our achievement, 77, same or higher than 77% of the schools in the state. This particular score, this most recent one, is our, I think, second highest in 5 years. So I think we're trending in the right direction with some of those things. Some of our focal areas in growth and our target group has us, I would believe, within striking distance of making that next jump.
So like
We
that,
know our on-track to graduation is in a really healthy spot. Achievement, obviously always room to grow with that as well. But we know in the growth in the target groups, based on what we're trying to really focus on and be intentional with, I think some of the things that we're doing with being intentional about examining the data, having meaningful conversations to identify and know who our kids are, where they're performing, and where they head into assessments. I think that we're in pretty good striking distance to see some movement with that.
okay, so that meets just comes from the 50.8 and the 55, right? Like that meets the 3-star,
Yeah.
meets expert, that comes just from,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, so that's why it just drops.
And I think,
Well, it comes
with
from
the
all
high
4 of
school-
them average.
All 4,
All
yeah.
4 of them are
altogether,
averaged
but that's
together.
what's-
But yeah,
That's
so
what
that's
you
what's
got
bringing
there,
it
yeah.
down,
Yeah.
yep.
All right, thank you.
And really, in terms of meets and exceeds, do you remember what the cut score is with that?
It's like, I
I
think
think
it's
it's-
70. I think
Yeah.
it's 70.
Couple points.
Okay.
And I think with the high school scores in particular, so our high school has been at meets expectations since the inception of the report card. It's never been anything else other than meets. Not that that's good or bad, but give you a little bit of context. And the score has kind of fluctuated up and down, right? There've been, now this is the second change in terms of the report card scoring, so it is hard to kind of compare year to year to year, right? But looking at even, the high schools around us, I think there was only 2 high schools that were exceeds. Everybody else kind of sits at meets, because the high school in general, you've got 3 different assessments that are feeding into this. You start to navigate some different components of, and the reality is, high school students at times, it becomes a little more difficult to get them to buy into the importance of these assessments, and that's become harder and harder over time. Not making an excuse, but, this isn't where we want to live, as we kind of keep trying to gain some ground and gain some traction. But as Trent said, I think the high school in particular, if we can tackle that growth component, that'll get us where we want to be. That one's been the bugger for a long time. Mhm.
How long, how long have we been using building thinking classrooms in high school?
So, I believe this is
This
the
is
second year, yeah.
This is the second year, but we have a half new math department this year at the high school, so it's their first
Two of
exposure
our
to
four
it.
teachers.
2 of the 4 are brand new to it this year, so.
Is that math consultant primarily with that way of that?
Well, she's been working with the high school math for some multiple years,
Okay.
kind of starting with like beliefs and working through, but it is a completely different math department than what she started with, by except one person. And so just continuing to try to build here's what we're doing it, here's how we're tying it to our resource in order to meet the standards. That's the big work they're actually doing this year. So the structure is one thing, but how is that structure supporting the essential standards that we have to, that's been their focus this year.
Is she well versed in building thinking classrooms?
Mhm. Yes, she is.
Do I hand
Right,
this off
yep,
to-
I'll bring it home here, so. So I'm gonna wrap up the last slide, and actually this will take us directly into the next component, which is a strategic plan update, because all of this kind of feeds together, right? So, as you heard us talk about a lot since we've been standing here, growth continues to be the biggest focus area across our district. As I said when we started this, we've been interacting with this data since July. We started these conversations, admin team, then extended it to our professional learning community leaders, which then extends to the whole staff, right? So we've had a lot of internal conversations district-wide and then obviously by building of what does our data show? What areas do we want to keep building on because it's working, and what areas do we need to wrap our arms around, have some really frank, transparent conversations about what we need to fix and keep getting better, right? So every time we stand up to do these presentations, I think your questions are great. Those are good questions to ask. We're never hiding anything. We're not trying to sugarcoat anything. It's always a balance of lots of really great things happening, and then how do we continue to just be better, right? So as I mentioned, growth, we've had lots of conversations about our building goals, individual teacher and principal goals wrapped around how do we keep growing kids. And really what is the data that we have and the evidence to be able to show that we are tracking how kids are growing. We know the hope isn't a strategy, right? So what evidence are we using and gathering at the classroom level and at the building level to be able to, in 15 weeks when we take the ACT again, what's going to be different than a year ago the last time we took it, right? Targeted intentional professional development, so you heard us talking about building thinking classrooms, for example. We have staff interacting, and I'm going to talk about this with our strategic plan, but in a variety of professional development around assessment, professional development around data warehousing, and how do we use and interact with data to help it impact instruction. Those things are very intentional based off of what our data is telling us, not just things we're kind of grabbing out of the air, but here's what our landscape is, and then how do we fill in some of the gaps, right? You've heard us talk about 90-day plans. I think this is the first time that we've actually brought information to you about 90-day plans. You've heard us talk about it. You heard it kind of referenced a month ago. But we wanted to bring you at least a little bit of information. The timing is right because we just wrapped up the first one. We just met 2 weeks ago with our building leaders from all the buildings to develop our next 90 days. Our staff just outlined and kind of unveiled the next 90 days as a staff at our last staff meeting. So really this is the question that we keep coming back to, right? What actions are in place and what evidence do we have behind it to show that we're trying to move the needle? When we come back here a year from now, we don't want to be talking about the same stuff, right? How do we show movement? You heard a little bit about this as well, just about resource overview, what's happening in some of the buildings. So Pam talked a lot about those first 2 bullet points to help supplement some things happening in the elementary school. Our elementary has a new math resource, which you've heard about. Teachers are loving. I know Sarah's met with the staff to get feedback about how that's going and to fill in any things there. And then again, we mentioned building thinking classrooms to get some continuity going between what's happening in the middle school all the way through the high school to be able to hopefully, again, fill in those gaps in terms of growth. And all of this filters into what's happening with our strategic plan. So I'm going to push pause there before I move into that. Any other questions that you have about report card, 90-day plan? Is it making a little bit of sense? It's a lot and it's complex, and we spend days and days and days. We did a CISA training. to really kind of pick it apart, to understand what is our report card telling us. We feel good about as a district that we're exceeding expectations. That's not a place we want to live forever, but lots of districts are having very different conversations. So we're excited about that, but how do we just keep growing, right? Okay, so with that, we will move to strategic plan. So the last update,
Just
yep,
a comment, question.
yep.
Do we talk with students about how important this is? I mean, I know it's hard enough to get them motivated on,
Yeah.
you know, sports sometimes, that is something they should really like. I mean, how do you get them motivated? I'm sure staff are very motivated. How do we get the students to realize how important this number is?
Yeah.
You know,
So-
and what do we say or do or tell
One
them
thing I
for
can
that?
speak to at the high school that we did, this was the first time that I know we've done this in my time being there, is when the kids took the practice tests this fall, we got information from the proctors of who was taking it seriously or who was quick filling in bubbles and putting their head down and being done with that. And we actually, again, I know when we do the real assessments in the spring, we can't have them do this, but we need to know where they're actually at and have that meaningful data. So we sent that communication to parents to let them know, hey, this is kind of what was happening, one of these things. If you want more information, please contact us and we can give you that specifics, but we want your kid to take this again so we can get an accurate idea of where they're at. That was then followed up with an intentional conversation between myself and the student, or Mrs. Whipke and the student as well, to help convey the seriousness of these assessments. So that's one example of kids that we know maybe didn't take them serious in the fall. Now, that's not a huge percentage of kids, but that's one way that we can help communicate that these are important and we need you to take these seriously.
Is that something you think could change with that consistent advisory person? Building that
Absolutely.
relationship?
Absolutely. Yep.
And do we ever have, so who goes through these with the parents to let them know? I mean, because you can see, oh, my kid's achieving, but unless there's someone who knows, like, yeah, but they're not growing the way they're supposed to be, like, explain those reports to them. I mean, because we go to the conference and no one really does that explanation. So I wonder if there's a way to pull parents in, or, hey, or just a very high level, like your student, yes, achieving, great, but you're not growing. I just, a way to try to get parents more involved in that. I mean, I'm sure people know, no idea. They see the report, they see your number, oh, you're higher last time, or you're not.
What does that
whatever.
even mean,
Yeah,
right?
I don't
Yeah.
even.
That was
how
gonna
do
be
we
my
do that?
answer to your first question of how do we bring parents into the communication to help us send that message of the importance of these assessments, right? You know, I still live by the philosophy of it's one day, it's one test. However, this is the only shot we get, right? We don't get a do-over. This is the one opportunity we have to show how are kids doing in Somerset, right? We're way more than a test score. We have lots of other ways that we measure progress, but the reality is this is it. This is what the state is saying, show us what you got, right? So we have had in the past, we've done class meetings, we've, done rewards for things that not necessarily like if you get this score, but, we've taken practice ACT, and if you show some growth from the spring or from the fall to the spring, trying to find something to get kids engaged of why does it matter how I do, right? At the high school level, that becomes harder and harder by the time they're juniors. And many of them, by the time that springtime comes of junior year, have a pretty good idea of where I might be headed or where I'm thinking, and oh, my college doesn't require an ACT score. That has become hard, right? So we have tried and will continue to try to do lots of things of getting them involved in the process of what's the why do we need you to really buckle down and give it your best. I know, I just reiterate what Trent said, when I know they had a list of kids that it didn't appear, necessarily gave it their best shot, we were like, nope, that's not okay. Like, you need to show us what you've got so we can help you, right? So it's a battle, but I think the parent and family component is a great point.
And I'm just thinking, I don't know, because, it's harder at middle school and high school to meet with a specific teacher, obviously
Yeah.
advisor or middle school, like, what teacher is gonna take this data when you go on conferences? Because you're not ever, in middle school, you're not going through those. Maybe in elementary school, they might say,
Yeah,
yeah, let's look at that data, here's what it means. I mean, I'm just trying to think of,
yeah,
what can we do to make sure everyone knows it's important, parents know it's important? Like you said, if it starts at elementary school, then in middle school, they gotta have that one teacher that's gonna explain, hey, you need to bring your scores in and go through and say.
Here we go, yeah.
I'm just trying to think of, like, this is very, very, should be at the top of most people's,
yeah.
or parents, and I don't think we have a meeting, we have one person in the audience, and something that defines our entire, report card for the state. How does Somerset do in the state? And we have no one here
Yeah.
that knows like, how do we get this as a bigger, like, this is very important, parents, like, and I think it's on us, and
Yeah.
we gotta somehow make that happen.
Yeah.
And the specifics is the letter you get in the mail,
Yep.
right, that has, that is the information that's all compiled from.
Right, yep,
Yes.
yep.
But like,
And they don't do comparisons from one year to the next, that's, right? So you can't, so like I couldn't say, oh, look, here's how my son did last year compared to this year. I'd have to pull out the data if I had it
On that letter, right,
on that letter.
it's just
Right,
from
and like for
that
this
test.
year, it's a brand new fresh start because they changed all the cut scores. So like what you have in front of you this year is what you have in front of you for this year. You can't look at past as far as like comparing how they did one year to the next because everything changed this year.
Do you-
So I hear exactly what you're saying. They don't put out like a growth score on kids, like for parents to have. Like, and I don't know where.
Do
I
you
would-
guys compile that? Like, would you,
How they do year
would
to
a
year.
teacher
So
be
could-
able to, in a conference, be able to have 2 or 3 years of data in front of them for my student?
So we do
Forward,
through
okay.
EduClimber.
Yeah,
We
can.
have an internal warehouse
Yeah.
that, yeah.
That we
So why don't,
upload.
we can talk about that a little bit more and see what we can kind of navigate for the spring. The hard part is too, with some of those state assessment scores, we don't get them until the following school year. We get them in the summer, right? And so trying to figure out just how.
We get them in the summer, but could you even have a meeting like this with parents? When's the first time you could do it? Because the state report card data was just released now.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
But we could talk about,
But
like, I could sit down and talk with
individual.
Bruce about his individual kid, because I'm
Right.
talking about it with him,
How
right?
soon could you do that?
I mean, I guess we have the data, I mean, when we have the data, so we get like an electronic copy of the data, but then the state sends us the paper copies, which we send home to families. And so, like this year it was delayed, like usually we have those mid-July, this year we didn't get them till the end of August, right? So that was because of the different cut scores and all the changes, so that was a big difference, but, they're hoping we are going to have scores in hand, hopefully like June, which is far more valuable than
I guess I didn't realize that
Right.
that score I get in the mail was just what, I thought it was like
1 year.
overall.
Yeah.
1 year, it's just how they did
Oh, I
on the
didn't know
forward
that.
exam for that school year.
see?
Mhm.
I mean, it's,
Listen,
I
this
always
is
thought it
good,
was an
right? This is
average.
a great discussion
It is,
of what
it's
else can
not.
we do to help,
Right.
right? Because at the end of the day, when we have a graphic that says the district exceeds expectations, that's great, but people care about how did my kid do?
No.
Like, that's awesome, how did my kid do, right? Are they growing, are they not growing, are they where they're supposed to be, are they head behind, right, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we can kind of mull that over a little bit and figure out what else we can do. Yep. Good. All right, anything else on that before I switch gears? Kind of, you'll see some parallel there, obviously, but. All right, so the last update that I gave was in August. So I want to kind of walk you through a reminder of our action steps. I outlined on here, which you'll see, evidence that we've collected so far. The list is not all exhaustive because I would have to have, for some of these action steps, multiple slides. So I try to pick out some of the biggest pieces of evidence that we've gathered so far, being about midway through the year. Again, these shouldn't be new. Mission statement, core values, and our mission outcomes. This is actually what we're aiming for by the time kids walk across that stage, that every kid is able to do. Reminder of our guiding question when we created this plan: how do we ensure the Somerset School District prepares students for an ever-changing world? Lots of things are happening in our world every day, and what are we doing internally here to prepare our kids to be successful for whatever their thing is when they leave here? So our plan, again, shouldn't be new. 4 pillars of our plan. What are we doing for students, staff, within our operations, and how do we bring the community into what we're doing here? So starting with, I know this is small. I eventually took some off here because it was getting way too small. This will be linked to the agenda so you can see all of this, but starting with our student pillar and our action steps. So we have 4 action steps that are highlighted in green that we are working on this school year underneath the student pillar. So, starting with demonstrating learning through authentic performance tasks and assessments that measure growth, right, and mastery of content. So here we have information about our 90-day plans, You heard Trent and Joe talk about analyzing assessments and strategies and how can students show us what they know in a variety of ways. The hard part about this when it comes to student assessment is that we talk a lot about personalizing education, and then we're judged on a standardized assessment, right? A flaw in education, in my opinion. So, how do we prepare kids, again, for kind of the world outside of here, which typically is non-standardized, but also prepare them to do well on our standardized assessments each spring, right? Teams really diving into assessment data, using our data warehouse for us as EduClimber. We also have tools within DPI on WiseDash, for example, that we can navigate lots of data to track their learning over time, to get a better picture of their growth and content. So again, common theme that you heard from the first part of our presentation, growth, growth, growth. Now what's happening internally to try to tackle some of that, okay? Again, we aren't just hoping it gets better. We have action steps in place, and teams are diving in at a really deep level to figure out what's going to work for them to be able to track the growth of our kids. Again, some authentic learning experiences that have happened. Our high school did a mock election. You heard the development of a new CTE capstone course. Our band and choir just returned from Disney. They had some amazing collaboration with worldwide musicians doing all sorts of cool things with the soundtrack of Tangled. So, some examples of, again, some authentic learning tasks and some things that we're working on to be able to expose kids to things other than just a 50-question multiple choice test. Next action step, foster local, state, national, and world partnerships for post-secondary options. So a lot of this is middle school and high school heavy. So doing a lot of collaboration currently with the Somerset Champions Group, Woodstock Builders, SMC, and Market Johnson. What a fabulous opportunity when we have got all kinds of trades things that are happening literally in our backyard. So Ryan Herring, Eric Olson have marched kids out there multiple times, and Market Johnson has been awesome of showing them all kinds of components of different facets of our projects, which has been amazing. I won't read them all to you, but lots of different field trips and experiences that have happened so far. Our middle school have the last two here where they've taken trips to the bank, they've taken trips to Dick's Fresh Market to try to bring some of the learning that's happening in those courses to life and obviously happening in our own community. And then you've heard me talk about the pilot student leadership cohort. That information is going to students tomorrow. So more to come about that, but since it was so close, I put that on there as well. And then the last two actions up for students, so create a multi-level support system to promote student well-being. So for this particular action step, we have a group of staff that have been to a training, and actually it's multiple trainings throughout the year, where we are trying to come up with a consistent framework for behavior navigation that's consistent throughout the district. Right now in 3 buildings, we have 3 different frameworks, we have 3 different words that we use. We have the Spartan way, we have SHS way, we have Super Spartan. How do we bring all of that together in a research-based way? So there's, again, some continuity from building to building when it comes to how we navigate behavior. And the last one, expand partnerships with county and state programs and resources to support the needs of students and families. So right now, we are working with St. Croix County and researching some collaboration options to bring some programming here on campus for families. And a group of us went about a month ago to see Galen Elmore, graduate of Somerset High School, speak about belonging, specifically in the workplace, and the importance of every adult in the workplace feeling like they have a space that they belong, and then how that translates into higher work levels, people being satisfied at work, feeling like you are coming to work every day to a space that you are welcomed and feel good about. So, again, about halfway through the year, I feel good about where we're at. A lot more will be added to this the next time that I give an update, but here is kind of student action steps. Then let's move to staff. So we have 4 action steps that we are navigating here. Again, all of those in green. So the first one is looking at our PD and surveying our staff after professional development to get feedback from how to go, what'd you like, what didn't you like, what would you like to see again, what was missing, and how are you going to use this to help impact your instruction. So far we have done 3 of those surveys, which have been awesome and provided us a ton of really good information. Providing collaborative experiences throughout the year for all district staff. So today, for example, was a professional learning day. We had a massive chunk of the morning where we had teams all the way from K-12 to 5-12, 6-12, that we're meeting to literally talk about vertical alignment, essential standards, pacing, sequencing. What are you doing in 8th grade so I don't repeat it in 9th grade? Those kinds of things. So being able to carve out time for those things to happen. Leadership trainings, which you've heard us talk about. Grade level and content area professional development. So an example of that would be the building thinking classrooms that's happening with our middle school and high school math teams. And then you've heard us talk a lot about our top 10 teacher tools, the training that's happening in our elementary school. And our last 2 action steps. So refine unit plans, assessments, and instruction of collaboratively determined essential standards based upon multiple measures of data. So the biggest action step we have so far there is our course overview documents, which are on the website. A lot of time and effort and multiple months went into creating those. And then professional development on assessment. So again, assessment was very intentional that we targeted that because of our area that we are looking at to improve with growth. We believe one of the biggest gateways to that is how are we assessing kids. And as a result, we are providing a wide variety of professional development to our staff on developing assessment. What does it look like to write an assessment with performance tasks, formative assessment, summative assessment? So we are working through what's called the assessment project through DPI and CISA. Sarah has been leading that charge with a large group of staff. We've so far been through kind of phase 1. Phase 2 is later this week. We've had a variety of staff participate, which has been awesome. So it's not just the same 2 or 3 people, able to kind of spread the wealth a little bit. So we're excited to see where that goes. This actually might be an action step that we extend into the 2nd year. It hasn't, I mean, frankly, we're the only school in CISA, I believe, that even signed up for this.
There might be one other.
Right. So on the DPI CISA end, it's been a little bit slow going, so that this one might extend it to a 2nd year. But we're excited about what we've seen so far. Staff gave us, we gave a survey after we did the first one, really good feedback, that it was good information and things that they can use in their classrooms. So more to come on that, but we're excited about that. All right, next one, operations. So 2 action steps here. Complete an external communication audit for family and community members, really looking at when do you want to be communicated with, how, what, why, etc. So that will be happening in the spring. And then communicate comprehensive plans, procedures, and requirements for internal and external stakeholder facility use, also in the spring. This one was developed, to ensure we are reviewing all of our safety protocol when we have external groups specifically using our spaces. And also, as you've seen in the parking lot over there, we have a massive new space that we are going to have to account for and create a whole other set of rules, if you will, in terms of using that space. So if we have a dance company, for example, that wants to rent out our Performing Arts Center, awesome. Currently we have nothing created with any outlines or anything like that of how that would go. So that was kind of the intent behind shoring up what we are doing right now and then looking a little bit ahead of what will that look like once we finally get the Performing Arts Center moving and grooving. Okay, so those 2 things will happen in the spring. Last thing, so community. Identify and implement ways to welcome new students and families in our schools. So currently in the buildings, we are doing a massive audit of what do we currently do for new students and new families. And we see those things as 2 separate things. So looking at what are we doing now, and then we will spend basically after Christmas, the first couple months, looking at that data and then determining what are the gaps and what are some action steps we need to put in place when we have new students and new families coming into our district. The last one, promote the district as a community hub for the well-being of children, families, and the entire Somerset community. So a couple things that we have here so far. You've heard me talk about the collaborative meeting between Village, Town, and School Board, which will happen this spring. The pilot leadership cohort, so all the information for that will be pushed out for the first time tomorrow. Social media, our website. We're going to put some flyers around town with a QR code, some different things. We had a fall clothing drive at our middle school earlier this fall. Our Learn to Love group did a trick-or-treat event for the food pantry. And our cute little 2nd graders went and did bingo at the Deerfield. So, a lot more to come. Again, this is, not quite, but almost halfway through the school year in terms of the evidence and things that we're keeping and tracking. When it comes to our strategic plan, we talk about this every week in our admin meeting. We have a lot of conversations when we're talking about bringing on new things, whether it's staffing, kind of you name it, how do these things align to our strategic plan? You've heard me talk about the alignment between our 90-day plans, our building goals, and some of the things that we have in here as action steps this year. That's very intentional. But lots of good things happening and more to come. Questions for me? Thank you.
All right, moving on. Thanks everybody for coming in, presenting a lot. Next item on the agenda is policy 8451, head lice. I think the policy committee, did you guys meet on that?
Did.
Lori, you met with our district nurse, and did you get any more info? I thought you were talking about for consultant, not consultant.
Medical advisor,
Yeah.
yeah. That
Okay.
We did.
And this is the update that they were,
That all of us together are bringing forward and recommending that we implement. This would be the first reading though,
Okay.
and it would need to come back for a second reading for action.
anybody have any questions on this one? The only thing I saw is that, so the kid stays in school, or the person may stay in school.
And I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about that, and so, the third paragraph down, where there's that green,
Yeah.
students diagnosed with live head lice may
Mhm.
not need to be sent home, but they might. So it depends on the situation.
Okay, I just, only because it said, I thought it said something before they need to be treated before returning to school, but we're not sending them home immediately.
Exactly, maybe.
Okay, all right. Good,
That's what the CDC and the DPI and the
not an expert.
Association of School Nurses is all recommending.
Okay. All right, any comments, I guess, email them over and district nurse or policy committee, I guess. All right, next item was the student privacy and parental access to information, policy 2416. We brought this up last month and then attached the language. I don't think this was the policy committee, this was brought up a while ago due to a few, or just our surveys, and some language was added in here. It was discussed, I think, with, or shown to administration as well to review before coming before the board. So I don't know, Dan, if you have any other comments on it?
Yep. The changes would be in red, and anything in yellow would go away. There's just one little piece there. Really, it's just adding in, just clarifying, adding the language whether required or optional to any survey, so we no longer have to wonder if anything is required or optional. It'll just be
Any survey with the items A through H.
right, A through H. Yep, in the policy.
Yep, if it's required or
Yep.
optional. If it's A through H, that would be required, or would be sent home, copy sent home, the parents notified, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions on it. So in that first paragraph where you have whether required or optional, you have it right after survey, but it would apply to, because the policy, the way it reads now, it's if they participate in any survey, analysis, or evaluation.
I thought about that after this change, and I think I would prefer to see that cover all those things.
So shouldn't it go after evaluation?
I think it should.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the same thing on the second page. Notify parents in writing of any surveys, analyses, or evaluations. whether required or optional, which may reveal information as identified in A through H in a timely manner, and provide, you're missing a word, and provide a copy of the survey.
Sure. Or would you also say, or analysis, evaluation, which
all
will finish
three of
all
them.
that? I agree.
I don't know though if you can do an evaluation because
I've never understood what that meant in this policy, so I don't know.
I don't think we want to be providing copies of evaluations. Evaluation implies an exam, a test, a quiz, and we don't want to be sending those out before the kid takes them. So a copy of the survey and maybe analysis, but I wouldn't include evaluation in that.
So would you take evaluation out of that portion, or would you keep?
Did you include the state statutes on this?
I did not touch it.
Okay, so, and I haven't looked, I mean, does
I
the
just copied
state,
and pasted.
I'm wondering if the state statute specifically includes evaluations, and that's why Neola has it in there, or if evaluations is just in there because of a language decision, maybe we can take it out.
I'll look at all those.
Can you give me an example of what an evaluation would mean in this case? Because we're talking about something presented to the students, correct?
I think it's we're trying to define if it's a test or a quiz, or if it's just, what.
You know, when I think of an evaluation, I think of a unit test, a chapter test, a quiz. In my opinion, that's what an evaluation is.
Sure, but it would involve the items A through H above, so.
And so then anything that would be a quiz is now being coached at, if it's treated as a survey, is that we make sure we know what we're talking about.
You have any more questions?
No,
Is there a timeline for like when would a parent need to be notified? Because what if an email sent out and then they do the survey 2 days later and the parent says, oh, I never got that email? Like how do we, what's the timeline? And then my other question would be, so this, the black and white, right, take out the color, that's what we currently have in place today, right?
well, and the yellow.
The yellow would be there. That's as it reads today. And as it reads today, a parent can get access to it, right, through any of your offices and the teacher. Right, they could see the survey, they could have a conversation, they can opt out of
This
it.
fall, we sent them out ahead of time, and you could see everything up front, and you said, you wanna be. you want
If
to
anybody has
be-
questions, they can come in and
Ask
get
them.
clarification, and they can opt out, as it stands today,
Right.
right?
But I think what you're saying about the time is important, because is it the next day, 24 hours, 48 hours?
Well, my question is, they are notified, as it stands today, because they get all that in the beginning of the year, and they have the opportunity to opt out, and all year long, nothing is added in, right? There's no surveys that are added, that people aren't notified, right? That's how you operate today, right?
Because like, for example, like with the fall one, if I opted my kids out, they chose to opt out for the year.
Yes, I feel like if you add this, if we added this stuff, suddenly now, it almost allows the teacher to just find a survey on Saturday night and decide, I'm gonna use this on Wednesday. When, as of today, they can't do that because they identify all that stuff ahead of time at the beginning of the year, right?
I think we're talking maybe two different things right now. So you're talking about the letter and the information we sent out beginning of the year for like our My Sabers screener, like our social emotional screener, right? So that was a letter, we said, here are the questions, here it is. On that letter, we did put, please let so-and-so know by this day. That way it kind of took out the you know, and it was what, maybe 2 weeks or something, plenty of time, right? But I think you're talking at the classroom level of something used in the classroom.
Well, yeah, isn't
Right.
that what this would apply to?
Well, it applies to
all of
both
them.
things that we're
Well, yeah,
talking
right.
about, right? Yep, so like social emotional screener that we gave district-wide, but also something potentially used in a classroom, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, because as it stands today, A through H are here.
yeah,
If a teacher mid-year finds some survey, right, on wherever
Yeah,
they find it,
yeah,
and it applies to or letter C,
yeah.
can they just give that out? Because doesn't it have to be identified at the beginning of the year? Like, don't they find all their tools?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so if they find
So-
something mid-year,
Yep,
they don't necessarily have to notify anybody, they can just use it in the classroom.
No, they would.
Well,
still
if it had to do
follow
with
this
A through
policy.
They would have
H.
to follow it, but a reasonable amount of
Right.
time for the parent to be able to know about it and respond of opting in or out, right? So is that 48 hours, is it 3 days, or?
Right now, the policy says in a timely manner, and
Sure.
that's what was recommended to keep. And that's very vague.
Right.
So, what are we changing then? Just the required or optional?
Pretty much. I think is that,
Just cast a wider net of,
so right now, if it's optional, you wouldn't have to notify. Because, you only have to if it's required. If that survey is required, you would have to let parents know. If it's optional, the teacher says, but you don't have to take it, it's optional, then we would have to present it to everybody. So that
If it fell
you-
into A through H.
Yeah, if it fell in
Yeah.
A through H.
And do you, kind of the definition of evaluation, what is a survey? What do you identify it as?
we just went through all of it.
Well, I mean, if a teacher asks, I know this came up a few meetings ago, right, like a two-question, a verbal question, is
We
that a
left,
survey?
no, we left all that back in May. Now something has actually happened where we need to address.
No, I know, but does this apply to like the verbal, like, is that a survey?
If it,
If it applies to those
if
A
it
through H?
encompasses A through H.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to put an amount of time for the parents to know about it and be able to respond. Needs to be a reasonable amount of time. I think a day's not enough, maybe 48 hours is a minimum. It's just a recommendation.
How far out do teachers plan lessons? Like, is a week enough time to kind of get a sense of what the next week looks like?
I wouldn't want it to be a week. If you want a specific amount of time, I would go with the least amount that is practicable. And if Steve thinks that's 48 hours, I wouldn't want to go more than that.
What do you think, Ian?
I think a reasonable period of time is, I mean, it's, we can all get behind it, can't we? Do we need to define what a reasonable period of time is?
I think it's important to come up with a specific amount because somebody's reasonable could be 24 hours, and it may not be enough time for the parent to
Well,
be able to evaluate.
that's probably unreasonable then.
Yeah.
Right, but if it's
Know what I
not,
mean?
if it's not well defined, like in the world of aviation, right, that could be dangerous. I'm just saying that because you're a skydiver.
I don't think putting a specific time, I get it, making sure there's enough, but I would hope that our staff would understand. If they send something out, they can't give it the next day, and it should be part of at the beginning of our curriculum, we should know if we're taking a survey that defines A through H. Everyone knows this. And I think that what we're trying to satisfy today is required and optional is, I think where our hang up was, that optional was okay to go with these and now if we're saying if it is optional, you need to let people know. They know if they're doing the survey or not. That's gonna hit one of these. They're not just gonna throw it out, pull it out one day. I would. And if, obviously they know, it's going to get back very quickly if this was taken. So I'm with you, Ian, and I'm kind of leaving it up to their judgment. I mean, they can do it, obviously, as much time as they can give. You know, the beginning of the class, we're giving, here's the surveys I'm gonna be giving.
Right.
Or, you know, a week ahead, here's.
If something does come up, they can notify parents in a reasonable period of time.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with required or optional. I think the timing is.
I'm just saying we need to have a minimum on there. It could be more than that, but at least a minimum. Something specific.
Yeah, I don't know, I think reasonable, I'm even kind of hung up on the adding the required or optional. I mean, I feel like this satisfies what we're doing as it stands today. I don't know if we need to make any adjustments to it. If the board wants required or optional, I'm okay with that. I think the reasonable period of time though is also appropriate.
So the language in a timely manner is sufficient.
Yeah, it talks about, doesn't it talk about a reasonable?
It's
I
in
just read
letter
it.
A on the second page. It doesn't say reasonable amount of time, it says in a timely
Your
manner.
time there.
Well, it also says in the last paragraph.
It talked about the
first
building
page,
principal.
Within a reasonable period of time after the request is received by the building principal.
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
Oh, in the yellow. Yeah, that yellow was language that they were gonna eliminate.
No, there's another spot.
Where are you?
Page one, the last
Page one.
sentence. Page one.
Okay, I see, thank you.
So feel free to email us, give us your advice, everybody.
So us is you,
Yes, everybody can direct emails to me.
because the policy committee did not
Yeah, you're right.
meet over.
Bring them to me.
Okay.
So 5 and 6 are coming back next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct, everybody?
Will it come back as a second reading, or are you gonna update it, bring it back as a second reading, we'll just vote on it? Is that kind of thought? Okay.
Everyone else agree with that?
For action.
Yeah. Okay. Next item. All right, board goals. Okay, we've talked about this one a few different times, about how we want to do it. Send out an email of what we had last year. We've had the report card update. I think to start, if anybody, I don't know, Alicia, if you wouldn't mind helping us kind of like maybe take down any notes that anybody says, just to kind of pull us together so we have some takeaway from what we go with. But I don't know, just kind of throwing it out, you know, we're halfway through the year. I think we've the board goals. We've had 6 months kind of this board of items since April, May, whatever, the beginning of the year. I think from now till the end of the year, kind of what we as a board want to focus on, if it's 1, 2 items, whatever, 3, and whatever people are thinking, but I guess something kind of we can all get behind for the second half of this school year, and after seeing the goals that the administrators put in place, just figure we throw it on to try to get something on. Everyone else has their goals, and sorry if anybody has any ideas.
Yeah, I think so, real quick. I thought what you said was very good. Really good points. I would go back to essentially that conversation we had 6 months ago and say, I would like to see a facilitator of some sort. Whether it's a local person that is cheap, or we use WASB, or we decide. I would like to see somebody in here that can help capture all of our thoughts, put them all on paper, compare them to strategic plans, 90-day goals, figure out how do they all align, and help us get down, rather than just doing it around the table. I would like to see, I'd like to see us use somebody.
When would you think that would occur?
Good question.
I mean, I'm just thinking, you know, we get into January now, we're doing it from January, February, March, you know. We're kind of booked here through the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think January would be a good time, end of January. You know, it's still early enough, it gives us half of the year. I mean, in all reality, that's probably a couple sessions though for somebody to do something like that. You know, maybe 2 sessions. Because, you know, I guess I would envision, you know, everybody throws out their ideas, kind of like Danny did. And we figure out like, okay, what lines up from everyone's opinions? And, you know, a facilitator that runs a room and does that has a really good job of narrowing the scope down to 3 actionable items. And then we gotta make sure they apply and they correlate with Shannon's plans and the building plans.
You know, how do we pick this one person who comes in, you know? I mean, that's kind of where we started this thing
Right.
4 or 5 months ago. Steve, do you have any thoughts on this one?
I think you're gonna have possibly a new board. It's gonna look a little different in April. Let's say
You'd say after
after that, and then vote on it and
nothing
look
for
at
the
it.
rest of the year? Okay. Ian?
Yeah, I still think it's not worth doing if we're not 100% invested in it.
Any thoughts on? Okay.
Like, if we're not all gonna be there
Right.
and work on it, there's
And
no point.
and even if that, I mean, that's an option Matt brought up, but I mean, just in general, just goals in general, like, do we wanna try to put anything on, do you have any goals we would like to even put on our, you know, slide, Shannon puts out Donnelly's dish every week, or on the top of our sheet, you know?
Is that something we can work on?
Yeah,
I'm disappointed. I had a whole lot ready to work on here.
we'll get there, so I'm waiting for you. Lori?
Well, I spent quite a bit of time looking at the data that we, we took that survey last summer. We paid School Perceptions to analyze the data and send us a report. WASB also sent us a report. And I tried to read through, I think it would have been much easier to go through this if we had somebody from WASB helping us. But by myself, I went through it, and the key takeaways I had were legislative advocacy. I mean, that came up in multiple items in the reports that we got. Data and accountability, so that we're making our decisions using data and that we're holding people accountable. And then the last one would be ethical governance. How we operate as a board, how we work as a team with our administrators, and how we treat each other. Those were the 3 areas I saw as our greatest areas of need.
I had similar ones, except I noted educational vision rated fairly low for us. It was 2.51 compared to the state average of 3.09. Relationships can be improved, 2.25 to 3.5 state. Accountability, we rated at 2.26 to the state's 3.28. Vision and top priority is student achievement for us. We were 2.57 compared to 3.38 statewide. And then community believes the district is effectively governed and makes decisions with the best interests of students in mind. We only scored 1.86 versus the state at 2.80. And then legislative advocacy improvement, communication. For legislative advocacy, we were 1.17 and 1.83 and only 1.0 to inviting legislators for school tours. And I think I forgot to write down what the state average was for those. But I think it was in the 2s to close to 3 statewide.
You had some goals written down too, that you shared.
Yes. I emailed those to everybody because my printer was not working. My first one was growth in student learning and support for success in student achievement with a measurable goal of 75% overall of our students exceeding expectations. Right now we're at 70.9. And then overall math improving up 5% in the district from 43.1% to 48.1%. And ELA up 5% from 48.7 to 53.7 in our meeting expectations by 2026 and 27. And then I gave a bunch of things down below that I thought could help us get there. Possibly developing a board subcommittee for curriculum that focuses on high quality instruction in all courses, including progress monitoring and teacher collaboration, taking a good look at test scores with our administration, ACT scores, and correlating metrics, ensuring all students feel academically challenged with those who are talented and gifted, and then monitor our new updated online program. District reports to the board on the academic progress of students by using available data that includes student performance on standardized assessments, participation in rigorous coursework, and any student, staff, and parents supporting the survey data. Expand and explore student opportunities and scholarships with the skilled trades and local businesses. So a lot of this actually does correlate to the strategic plan and Shannon's goals. Conduct an in-house. This I think would be really valuable, a valuable piece of information. Conduct an in-house survey of students 2 to 3 years after graduating on how the district prepared graduates for the workforce or college. My second goal would be growth in student well-being and safety, with the goal of developing a metric for measuring non-violent incident reports. So the bullet points under that would be monitoring the impact of our bullying prevention efforts as measured by student discipline data, student reports, and cell phone or survey data. I would love the board to discuss cell phone use and the mental impact on all ages. I am reading Jonathan Haidt's book right now, and it is quite apparent that the evidence is pointing to that being very impactful. Gather student data on a biannual basis regarding well-being, student well-being, that's in the strategic plan. Parent communication to board members regarding belonging efforts would be included as a strategy to support this goal. I'll make it really quick. The third goal is supporting leadership and organizational support. I believe that is one of our goals currently. But I fleshed that out a little bit by supporting execution in the classroom, prioritizing teachers' needs. I would love to see monthly visits by board members to the schools to foster relationships and provide support to teachers and staff. This would also promote relevancy to policy decisions that we make for students and staff. I would love to see a summary of staff exit interviews quarterly. I would love to have a quarterly report on recruitment and retention efforts by the district. I would love to assess teacher performance, and then a recap of professional development resources and training and how that relates directly to improving student achievement goals. My second point under that would be building trust by board member interactions with the community and students. I mentioned Shannon's leadership cohort. The curriculum advisory council composed of parents that we are talking about, the student cohort. I would love to see student representation return to the board. And then I would really like to see board member attendance in non-curricular events monthly, such as art fairs, sports events, concerts, parades, etc. My last goal would be ensuring long-term financial stability and sustainability for the district with the goal of avoiding an operational referendum. I'd love to see a subcommittee for finance develop, which focuses on long-term planning, staffing, and facility use. This could meet with the business manager quarterly and be presented with 1, 3, and 5-year budget and projections based on enrollment, revenue, and expenditures. We could also review monthly board bills quarterly with the board treasurer as needed. And the last thing I have under there is better communication with our legislators on educational funding issues. That's a lot. I worked on that for a long time.
I think regardless of what the board goals are, we gotta remember what the scope of the board is. It's not to micromanage and run the district. We hire and evaluate a superintendent, we set the budget, and we need to work with our legislatures. As a board member, you know, some of this I think is getting a little too far in the weeds. I'd caution us on that because that's what this team is here for.
I mean, so when I was thinking of the goals and to your point, I liked, you know, if I went like this, kind of shrunk it in full points, like, I'm just enjoying like the report card, achievement, like we met on tonight, you know, how do they want to increase, we want to increase. How do we make sure, like setting a percentage, they have that percentage in their goals for the year? I agree that's something we can focus, but like what can the board do? You know, we have a consultant that comes in, and what else can we do? You know, what support is needed from us, you know, which you kind of have board support, to make sure that we give them what they need to increase to the 90th percentile, or to get that to the 66% on growth across the board. I mean, I kind of need that feedback from them, like, I want us to grow, I want that achievement to be there, that's very important. That's, I mean, all of us have kind of hit on that one. You know, what would be supportive of us to them to make sure that happens? And make sure we're giving them that without, you know, like Matt's point, micromanaging. I mean, extracurricular, I like your item about board members in attendance and non-curricular events. You know, you talk about being there in the school monthly to whatever, being the school staff, but I like this one as our monthly touch point. Like, there are so many things that go on here. There are community functions, you know, fundraisers that are school related that board members should try to hit. You know, I think that's a great goal, that each board member is monthly going to these events, something different they wouldn't go to, or, you know, the December has the play, you know, we have 2 home sports games this week, we have hockey that's starting this week, I mean, we have lots of stuff going on that board members should be present at. You wanna see what's going on in the school other than just the report card, see how our students and community and parents are interacting at these games, or these events, or fairs.
I just don't think it's appropriate to tie to a board goal, because you can't ask a board member or have them commit to being present and stuff.
I mean, is it a bad thing?
Well, no, they should be. I mean, that should be part of.
I mean, is that a
like,
goal
show
for
up.
us though, that we should be present at those things? That's what I'm saying, it's a goal.
Not
It's
to
a
try.
not a mandate.
Yeah, it's
It's not a mandate, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a goal.
Well, it's a goal that you represent the district in the best fashion possible. And if that means showing up at every home game, great. If that means that you come to the meetings prepared and engaged, great, because you travel for work, great.
Right.
Like, yeah, I would, represent this district in the best light possible.
Yep.
I do like, just looking at number 1 here, like growth in student learning, right? So if we broadened it and said, support the strategic plan, the building goals to ensure that we support growth in student learning, like something with no numbers tied to it, but it's a goal that says we are gonna commit to whatever they come and present to us, we're there with them, and we're gonna support them. Like, I would be fine with something like that. I just don't know how you can say we're gonna go to 75%, because we have no ability to change that, and suddenly we fail at the.
But making sure, you know, to your point, making sure we give them what they need to get to 75%, or, hey, we don't get there next year, okay, what did we not, what could you use more from us to make sure we get there? And just a couple things we brought up tonight, to make sure everyone knows this is important, well, this is a goal.
And that's, as you were talking, you know, I was thinking, okay, if they came back to us and said, you know, this is what we envision as the statement to say you support us, right? Like, maybe that's a great way to say, okay, that's our goal. Because you kind of have to tell us what you mean.
I view it the opposite way, that the board sets our goals. Really, we should have had this done this last summer, because what the board goals are, that should direct them.
Right. Yeah, and I agree, like, I want to increase, and I think I brought up a year and a half ago, where do we want this number to be? 80%, 75% achievement, yeah, that's where I'm going with. We wanna be in the 90th percentile, I mean, that's, how do we get there? You know, too much to say that's our goal right off the bat, probably. I don't want people to fail, but I mean,
But
showing
all
progress
those
towards
numbers
that.
that you had in that goal, Danny, I think our administrators have them in their building goals.
They are.
And so, you know, that's where they belong.
Yeah. I did do a lot of research from other school boards, talked to a bunch of other school board members, was in webinars for developing board goals, and they all have percentages in their goals. Like this.
The board does?
The board does.
Does admin have their own percentages?
And they do too, yep, and sometimes they, a lot of times they overlap.
They should.
And they support each other.
So this is where we get to this point. And now, you know,
I mean, we could identify 3 goals. I mean, I think just looking at this and what Lori said, I think we're all on the same page. Like, it's just the wording, like, growth. How do we, what is the board goal around growth? I mean, I think we all agree that should be one of the board goals.
growth in student learning.
Yeah, and I guess, Lori, I would agree with you. Our goals should direct them. We don't have any goals identified. They presented on this tonight. And, you know, I think, okay, if we're gonna identify a goal, let's identify a goal that's going to support the success of it. That's kind of why I said that.
Yeah.
I would agree. In the future, our goals they should be reporting how they're trying to meet our goal. Absolutely. But here we are.
Yeah.
So a goal of growth in student learning.
I like number 3, support leadership and organizational support. You know, I think a goal around that is important.
Okay, so we have, I want to go back to that first. So the growth in student learning, is there a percentage that's tied to this, or is this something that we say the board, our goal is growth in student learning? Higher, I mean, is it, the problem is, I mean, to Sarah, you talked about it earlier, it's hard to compare from year to year, right? But also that report card, we're, you know, at 70.9. We want to be above that next year,
Right.
I think.
I mean, that is the goal. If you wanna look at something that, yes, there's the academic piece in there as well, but like, that would be where you could set a goal of
Like,
increasing our report card by
yeah, and is that, you know,
1 point, 2 point,
growth in
whatever, you're
student
kind of picking a
achievement,
number,
learning,
but.
increase our report card, you know,
Our districts.
our district report card 2% or something, you know, is our goal. I don't know, that's, I'm just throwing something out, you know? Like, you have all these other things that are, if you increase yours, I don't know, Shannon, you have thoughts?
I think, first of all, board goals, yes, I think great. Whatever that is, great, because I think it's long overdue. I think that's an important component that ties right into everything else we've talked about tonight, for sure. I can be on board with just about anything. I think I always get stuck on, like, I think you brought this up of like, what can the board directly control? Like, what do you directly have impact on? And if that can be worded in a way that, great. I mean, I think we all want higher student achievement, no matter what the numbers are, you bet, right? We all want a board that has a really good working relationship with all of you and your admin team. That doesn't exist at a high level right now, so what could happen for us to get there, right? So I think it's great. Start small, 1 or 2 things, I don't know.
Would developing those subcommittees help with that, do you think? With that collaboration? Or
Aren't we a
just-
subcommittee? So that's where I go back to, like, we are the subcommittee. We are the committee that gets reported to from the admin. Like, that gets brought up, but like, people have asked us to be the voice. Like, we are that committee that should get the information reported to us that we can disperse. That's my take, like, we need more from them, more presentations from Dave on budget, more presentations from Sarah on what is going on with the math curriculum specifically, or like, then we need to ask for it to get it on here so that we can have that conversation. That's just me, I guess.
I agree completely with you. You
We want
hit
to
it,
dig in.
you hit it right on, you know, like, when I started asking questions about, you know, the math thing in the high school, we have to ask those questions. Yep, and I do think, you know, as the hired staff, if we're not happy with the results that we're getting, we need to have those conversations and tell them, so that it can be fixed.
Like your point, like the math, like, that's the point, not that I wanna pick on the whole
Right.
score, like, how are we gonna get that number up? Let me see it, you know, we don't need a committee to say, let's present to our meeting that number needs to get better, we wanna get behind you, how can the board help you? What are we doing? How do you see this getting better, like, maybe that way instead of.
And that's why I think Danny's number 3, support leadership and organizational support. I think that hits it right there. You know, supporting, she wants to do the pilot program with the cohort thing, supporting that. Having these conversations about the specific curriculum pieces, giving them feedback and letting them go back to work. I mean, I think number 3 is good. We just don't need the extra subcommittee identified.
For leadership and organizational support.
Like the teacher performance, we legally don't, we can't look at that stuff.
That's, I mean, I do like the bullet point though, like showing up at things to see what's going on in our school, because yes, the report card is very important, but I think as board members, we need to know what else is happening, you know, out there, you know, that our school does, and that we can report on to people or see that happens. So I mean, like you said, like support and leadership, organizational support, like that is going to events, that is being out there, that is, you know, people see, they know who the board members are, you know, if they're supporting this, you know, they can ask us questions, or maybe they'll feel more approached to talk to us, I don't know, that's why I like the more we can get out there, the better. Obviously, people are traveling, I was doing it too, you know, when you were gone, you're gone, you're made less, but. I mean, I like those 2 goals, I don't know if we wanna try to do something on the 3rd, or we just start with 2 and bring back next time, and.
The only thing I'd add in there is, you know, you keep talking about events, but just maybe a bullet point of representing the district in a positive light.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, Steve, like, all the conversations you had early on with businesses, like, all those conversations are super valuable, right? Maybe they don't turn into anything today, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 3 years, but getting out and just having those positive conversations, and, you know, if, maybe you can't ever go to a sports event, but you can go out and do all that stuff, there's a ton of value in that.
No, yeah, community involved, yes.
But like we all commit to, we're going to be involved in the community,
Yes. Yep.
and we're gonna
Makes
be
sense.
a positive representation. Now, I would be good with those 2 to start with.
I mean, eventually, we gotta talk about finances. Enrollment is huge. So why can't we also mirror that goal that maybe the administrator would have, stop that enrollment drop and increase that?
I agree, but I think, well,
And a
that's,
certain,
yeah.
you know, percentage goal over X number of years.
yeah, I guess I was thinking, you know, like that number 3, she has support leadership. She has the goals. It's there, kind of like Lori identified the building specific. We have to show her we support it, and if we don't agree with what she's projecting, I think we need to give that feedback and say we want to see your projections higher. But our goal is, we're gonna support you, but she sets the number. But I think the bullet point of hitting enrollment or something to that effect would be good. Kind of like being positive in the community.
I mean, I like the long-term financial stability, and ensure long-term financial stability, I think under there it's enrollment, it's, you know,
Well, part of that has to do with your legislative advocacy as well.
right, yeah, you can put those, yeah, that in there,
That's all in there, isn't it, currently, how I had it?
yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, I just was like, you know, I was just simplifying it. So, you know, taking out the operation referendum, you know, present 1 through 5 year updates, but just,
I'd be good with those three. And those are fairly aligned with what you identified, right, Lori? Pretty close generally?
Legislative advocacy, data and accountability, you know, I didn't have it written out
Right.
as a
No, no.
sentence, I just had those topics, and ethical governance. So, based on our discussion, I was able to write down one thing, support leadership and organizational goals. But you said a couple other things that I didn't catch. Did you want to have something about,
Growth in student learning achievement.
so that's what I had considered, support leadership and organizational goals, because our leadership, our administrators' goals are all tied to that. But you want something, you're thinking of something, you're envisioning something like,
You were thinking like increased growth by 2
Yeah,
points,
like,
right? You were
like
thinking
something,
specific?
like something like, you know, you always wanna have your measurable, and you know, they have measurables on their end, but like, from our end, you know, we're telling people to come to this district, or, you know, we don't wanna be status quo, we wanna make sure, and everyone knows that, but like, putting it down there that next year we come around the end of the year and we say, how do you do on our goals? Well,
how about support
Yeah.
leadership and organizational
Why not?
goals of increasing the district report card score by a certain of increasing the district reports card score by 2% or 2 points?
2 points.
It is a percent, right?
Yeah, it's all 100, I think.
You could, I guess my only question would be, as a board, then what is going underneath that of how you're going to do that?
Well, that's why I'm putting it with support leadership and organizational goals, and then saying what your leadership and organizational goals are. Because I believe every building had a organizational goal of increasing achievement
Right?
by
Yeah.
like 5% or something.
I get that, I think I'm stuck on
How
what is
are
a
we gonna
board,
support?
as a board, what are you guys doing to tackle that goal that you just said?
We
Cause I'm hearing
we have to
building
make-
goals, I'm hearing, right? And I'm not arguing, I'm just thinking out loud of like, so I can help execute this, what does that look like, right? You know what I mean?
Supporting leadership and organizational goals. So what would the board do to support it?
Yes, I think that I'm, what's like the next level of that?
I'm
Right.
gonna say, Steve,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it ties back to the accountability that our administrator would have to meet certain numbers. I mean, we all get judged in our work, right, by metrics. So we just have to have identifiable numbers, right, that we have to meet as an administrator, because those are our goals, so that would be on you, right?
Yeah,
but I think to her, Shannon's point is she's saying that's not her goal, that's our goal. So
Right.
if we don't hit that, we would fail on that too. But what are we going to
Right.
do to
But
make sure
the-
that we?
when I look at it, I think, okay, we're putting a number out there for you to work towards, right? It's 2
Yeah.
points. So that's what to work for. The goal, the true goal for us is so when you come and say, hey, ELA is struggling, we need to take a deeper dive into curriculum, into the PACE problem. We have committed that we want a 2%, so we're gonna give you everything we have. I guess that's how I look at, it's putting us at the table to say, we're committed, this is our goal. If there's something you need, we're not just gonna say, no, we're not changing that. We've already committed to say, we're gonna support you. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
And I think of like, okay, a quarterly or a monthly, whatever, update from each, of like what, that we're gonna put it on our agenda, like what thing on there will be on our agenda that, what is being done to, you know, show this growth in each of those schools or something. I don't know if that's too much or not, but like, we need to put something on there that,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think.
what have we done or what, you know, so we can have an interaction with this group, they present to us and then, okay, what else, you know, do you need anything else or you even feel supported or?
Yeah.
I'm just, something we haven't done before, and we're trying to get better, I'm just trying to think of.
Well, I think,
We can ask questions then too, then, and
yeah, I think it allows us to ask questions. I think in all of the goals that we've established since I've been on the board, like, there's really none of them that we can do anything about meeting. They're just kind of on paper. So this one feels like this is actually a goal that we can, again, it's committing to the support of you, because you are the one that really needs to meet a goal. But we have to commit to supporting
I
you.
think that's where I'm like in the gray of, I feel like, if not necessarily a board goal, I feel like, and I just need to, I think, flush it
No,
out.
I think
because
it's
another.
a board goal, and if the district doesn't meet it, it's not tied to your evaluation, it's not tied to your performance. I think that's tied to us and figuring out, well, okay, why didn't the district go up by 2%?
I see what you're saying. Yep.
It's not
Yeah.
your superintendent goal.
I think maybe that's where I'm stuck. Okay. That helps.
Yeah,
No, that's.
And I
helpful.
even think, okay, back to just we had the conversation about conferences tonight. First time I've ever talked about that.
Mhm.
And so to take a deeper dive and figure out, okay, if we know what the struggles are, like you want parents engaged in these assessments and understanding that letter.
Yeah.
I have 3 kids in this district. I always thought that was just an average of every year's attendance. Never knew that before. So now that I know that as a board member, we can go in the community and start to talk about that stuff and help drive conference attendance or structure the conferences. We can change other things and impact other things because we can ask questions. That's our goal.
Yeah. Okay.
So in other words, we're running this more like a business, right, where we have definable goals, metrics. We want to increase enrollment by X number of percent the next couple of years. What do we need to get there? Yes, we would support the administrator if we can identify what needs to be done, if it's a new program, new curriculum, whatever it might be.
We just had a huge presentation on how we could do that, and we voted it down. I mean, we had months of work on how to do that.
Yeah, but just because we set a goal doesn't mean we no offense, but we're gonna take everything you bring to us. I mean, I think we also have a responsibility to make those decisions as well. Like, I think there's a piece of that. But that shouldn't hinder the work you're doing. I mean, the things you're bringing to the table are all to drive us into a better position, and we sit at this board to be a representative of the community, that's all. Are you clear?
Yeah, that was helpful. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we have growth, we have support, leadership and organizational support, and we have,
Use data. So I've got 2 so far. I'm still trying to get one that covers.
financial stability.
No, I was on that other one about being out in the community and.
That's the support, leadership and organizational support, right?
No,
Or support.
I had the support, leadership, and organizational goals of
Under the first
increasing
one?
the district report card growth scores.
Yeah, I agree. I think those
Yeah,
kind
that makes
of could
sense.
tie together.
And then I had used data to make decisions and hold leadership accountable. And then I was trying to get something about, ethical governance or community outreach or something like that.
I think, I mean, his point on it was, we,
Present.
positive,
Yeah.
positive
That,
image of the.
So how did you say
positive
that again?
presentation.
Should represent the district in a positive light when interacting with the community. But I think that's part of supporting administration. I don't think that's a separate goal.
Well, but I think she's just putting as
As like
a
a
bullet
bullet.
point underneath that category, like,
well, no, I was making 3 goals.
all 3 goals.
Represent the district in a positive light.
Yeah, and that would be that by outreach in the community or extracurricular
Yeah,
activities.
well, when we make our goals, we don't put, in the past at
Right,
least,
right,
we
right,
haven't
you
put
don't put stuff
action
underneath, yeah.
steps underneath them.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
So I can put those on in an email so everybody can see them, that's helpful to me to be able to see something.
Could we add just one more, and then we can maybe whittle it down? But I do like, and I think maybe putting it on paper gives us all time to kind of digest it, but ensuring the long-term financial stability and sustainability of the district.
And how are we gonna do that?
Well, I mean, just like the 2-point growth increase, I think maybe throwing a number out there. Again, it's not your goal, right? You already have these, you've identified them. But if you know we want to increase enrollment, you know, I don't know, maybe tying some type of number, it might be too specific, but.
That's gotta be on us. I mean, as board members, yes, we need to increase enrollment, and how are we gonna increase enrollment? Like to Shannon's point, we
Well-
have to be the ones, you know, right now, we've had a lot of reports on enrollment, and, you know, what Shannon's done in outreach, and like, how do we increase that enrollment? You know,
I've given quite a few ideas on that in this past year.
Well, I don't think I don't think we can. I don't think we as a board can increase enrollment.
well then, okay, so then,
But we, you know, I mean, to Lori's point, she did a big presentation and research on one thing we could have brought to the, right? So, I mean, you have a very valid point. But again, it doesn't mean that we're just gonna spend taxpayer money for something. But I think the goal of ensuring the long-term financial stability, I think that's important to have down on paper in some fashion. And I don't know, and that's why I say maybe put it on paper, we can look at it and think, what does that mean to each of us, and how is it,
I mean, cause
how do we meet it?
right now, I mean, we
So-
spend an event for the year.
I'm still thinking about enrollment. Just ballpark, if we're at 1,450 students in the district right now, an increase of 2% would be adding 29 students. I think that's kind of a lot myself.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It is a lot. And much of that is out of our control.
Exactly.
Some of it in our control, for sure. Some of it will always be out of our control.
But again,
How about if we said represent the district in a positive light in an effort to increase student enrollment? Or increase student enrollment by representing the district in a positive light? Would either of those work?
It's not specific. It's gotta, I think it's gotta be measurable, it's gotta be, there's gotta be a number to it.
but again, the only problem though, Steve, is if, I don't wanna go down the road of suddenly we say the administrator didn't meet that goal because it isn't her goal. I guess that's my only.
That's my concern as well.
Mhm.
And I think some of that goes back to just the current overall relationship between board, me, admin team. I don't trust that that wouldn't happen, so that makes me anxious. Accountability, you bet, put numbers to it, you bet. I think we have some other work to do for that, but
Yeah, and I guess, I'm just thinking
I mean,
about.
increase enrollment, I mean, if that's one of our things, like, we're just, gonna increase.
I go back to the growth,
We don't-
I go back to the
percentage, but
growth
like-
goal in terms of it helps hold us accountable, that we committed to this, right? So if we wanna see enrollment increase, there's nothing actionable that we can do, it's going to increase enrollment. There's not.
Well, yeah, there are some things that we can do. We can present the district in a positive light on social media and out in the public,
Well, I think it would take a lot more than that.
but that's one thing.
That's something that is something we can do, you're right.
Yeah.
Can I say something, as I'm sitting here just listening?
Yeah.
Like Lori brought up contacting legislators, I've said on our state advocacy for legislators, yeah, that's something you all can do.
Yeah,
And that's something tangible that you can do to support the work that we're trying to do, especially with where the current budget is and contacting. Like, that is literally something that each one of you could do and contact our legislators and get to them. So when you're looking for like an actionable item, that is something you can certainly do, which also paints
For the
our
financial
district in a
stability.
positive light.
So, yeah, right.
Right, like that's something that you could do
Right.
for the financial stability piece. I'm just sitting here listening, trying to,
No,
not trying to tell you what to do, but it's an option,
Well, we need that.
so.
I can tell you the response I got
I-
last year.
I'm sure I could tell you the
Us wasting
response.
money,
Yeah.
and that's the problem.
Yeah, isn't that, yeah, you sent that to me.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, Lori, if you put those together, like, that's the most progress we've made in the last year, so.
Yeah, so
Like, that's not our,
It's
that's a
8:30, so I think
It's a great start.
we have other stuff to do tonight, but I think that's a great start, I agree, and I thank, Danny, everybody for coming, ready to discuss, I think we'll put it on, do we wanna put it on the next agenda to review again? At the next meeting in December? We'll throw it on there and we'll get some feedback and everyone can kinda,
We get some kind of working document going?
yeah, Lori.
Yeah, I've got it.
Would we be able to, like, add to it, like a
Sure.
Google Doc?
Yeah, I'm just putting it in an email.
It's just a board goal,
So I just
something
remember, so we gotta be careful what we're putting on there as comments. And we've done this before with contracts and reply things, we can't, like, we can have it, maybe you download it yourself, and then you make your updates, and then bring it back to the next meeting
But
with thoughts.
don't be
But you
emailing.
can't be,
Yeah,
you can't
right,
be going
right.
through of, commenting on someone else's comments. We've had that issue before. But you can take it, so if you can put it on Google Doc, that'd be great, and then we can all download it and have some ways to, like Steve's point, make sure it is measurable, make sure that we can do something as a board about these items, so. All right, okay, 8:30. Next item. Thank you, everybody, very helpful. Consent agenda, anybody wanna make, a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the personnel update and the athletics activities personnel update as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes 6-0. General information, so December 16th, our meeting will start at 5 o'clock. We'll start with board member interviews. Yes, Ian?
We now have 10 people?
We have-
11.
11?
No, it is 10, I
We
can
have
look
10.
at, yeah.
That is an hour and 40 minutes at 10 minutes apiece.
But I think if we have people, we'll have a lineup, and I think we give people 10 minutes, but if they don't take the 10 minutes, they should all be here ready to go, and we'll just go through
As
them.
in no particular order, I mean, they're.
I think we'll send out, Felicia, send out an order, probably the way that they submitted.
With the scheduled time, or just be here and you were gonna go.
Be
in this
here and
order?
we'll go, 1, 2, 3, this is the order that we'll go in.
And we're gonna accomplish it in an hour.
Well, we'll accomplish it in whatever long it takes.
When is the deadline? Is it
So,
passed?
so the
Wednesday?
deadline
We
is
still have 3 more days.
December
Wednesday.
4th, December 4th at 4 o'clock.
Wednesday.
So Wednesday at 4 is the deadline. And then Alicia will email questions out on the 5th. And then those are due back next Wednesday, the 11th by 4. And then that'll be sent to the board. And then at that time, I think when you get the questions back, I think we just take this back in the order that you received them. And you go first, you go second, you go third, however they've come in. And then the last person who came in last, and we'll go through, everyone gets a max of 10, and if they go faster than that, we just roll through them. That's kind of what happened last time.
So just to confirm, I know we talked a bit about it last time, but
Yep.
we're free to ask the questions. I think that was we
Yep.
agreed that we would ask questions,
Yep,
but make sure we're consistent with all candidates.
yep.
Okay.
And yeah, we should get, that was the goal. If you ask a question to somebody, you should ask it to everybody.
Right, and the candidates don't need those ahead of time. Right.
So we'll have their bio, feedback, whatever. Obviously, some people give more than others. But yeah, if you have some questions, should we ask to everybody? And if it takes longer, it takes longer. I think that's just how it is, and we're at a tight time of year. So it's probably expect a longer meeting and that night. Any other comments on that one? We clear on the dates? Yeah, so we'll start at 5 o'clock on the 16th with no listening session prior to that meeting. And then the second item is, so deadline for school board candidates for the actual spring election. Alicia, correct me on anything here, but it's all listed what you need, but if you want to run again, you need to submit your paperwork by the 7th to the district office.
By
So-
5 PM.
5 PM on the 7th. And then, yeah, I think, is there anything else to add on that one? So, and then, it for general information then. District celebrations, Ian, since you're here, go first. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. And Joe. And Trent, who's not here anymore. Shannon. For going through all that for us.
Lori?
Drama Club's presenting A Partridge in a Pear Tree on Saturday, December 14th at 6 p.m. and Sunday, the 15th at 1. Ski Club starts next Wednesday, the 11th, and once again, at this time, we have 116 participants.
Wow. Is that 2 buses then?
Yep, 2 buses, it's official, we have 2 buses. And the SMSF scholarship applications, I hope our seniors are working on those.
You still on the scholarship committee? 'Cause
Yes.
Lacey was our board rep, so you're on, so you're a board rep now?
I guess, unless somebody would like to join me.
Recent applications?
We're a fun crew.
Anything else, Lori?
No, that's it.
All right,
Thank you.
when's, and to apply for that dinner on the 14th, that's on, is that on Facebook, on the website? How to apply for that?
You mean to make a reservation
Yeah,
for
make
the
a
play?
reservation, yeah. Is there a
Yeah.
dinner or just a reservation for it?
Alicia's showing us right now.
There it is.
Alicia, can you, so it's on the district website, under the Spartan Scoop.
Under, if you go down, to scroll down to the news,
Yep,
it's there, yep.
So it's on the main page.
and there's a link that you can, I don't even know if there's
Tickets
any
not
spots left, are there?
I don't.
Can you click on it? And let's see if there's any spots left. Oh, no.
All right, we'll work on that. Okay, all right. Fall or winter sports events getting in full swing. I think we have for sure 2 home basketball games this week. Is there hockey home at all?
Tuesday night, yep.
Tuesday night hockey's home. All right, so yeah, that's, and again, thanks for presenting tonight. That's great to have you here. Danny?
We have the first wrestling tournament on Friday night for high schoolers in Glenwood City.
Just thanks to all of you for the report card, for kind of digging in deep and making sure that we understand it, because I had questions. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I appreciate seeing the goals, and I look forward to, the next 90 and 180 days. And I was going to say, winter sports are in full swing, and just a thank you to Lori for Ski Club and all of the work that goes into it. Much appreciated.
All right.
Steve?
Oh, yeah, Steve.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So it's good to see the Performing Arts Center progress. It's fantastic. It's going to be a huge part of our community. There is a correlation between music students and how well they do academically, so I think it's going to inspire music students and art students. So it's exciting to see that.
Thank you. All right, now take a motion to adjourn into closed session of the board pursuant Wisconsin statute section 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of a public employee over which the board has jurisdiction. Superintendent mid-year evaluation. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Steve. All right, we'll take a roll call. Steve?
Yes.
Ian?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
So, yes. Danny?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming in.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.